Lucas Reed stared at his phone screen at 11:47 p.m., his heart pounding in a way it hadn't since the night Sarah died. The message from his neighbor Maya was simple. "I painted something for you and Noah. I hope this doesn't cross a line." But it was the image attached that shattered 3 years of carefully constructed emotional armor, a canvas depicting him and his son in warm golden light, with a third figure rendered in translucent brushstrokes hovering between them. Sarah. Maya had painted Sarah into their portrait without ever having met her, capturing something Lucas couldn't even name. His hands trembled as tears he'd forbidden himself to cry finally broke through. This wasn't scandal. This wasn't temptation. This was someone seeing straight through to the grief he'd buried so deep he'd almost convinced himself it was gone. And for the first time since becoming a widower at 32, Lucas Reed felt truly, terrifyingly seen. If you're wondering whether one message can change everything, stick with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The neighborhood of Maplewood Terrace prided itself on being the kind of place where people minded their own business with surgical precision. Front lawns stayed trimmed, Christmas lights came down by January 2nd, and neighbors exchanged polite waves without the burden of actual conversation. It was exactly what Lucas Reed wanted when he'd moved into the modest 2-story colonial on Birch Street 18 months ago. He'd chosen the house for its unremarkable qualities: beige siding, black shutters, a garage that faced away from the street. Nothing that invited questions. Nothing that suggested the 34-year-old man living there with his 6-year-old son was anything other than ordinary. Lucas had learned that ordinary was a kind of camouflage, a way to move through the world without triggering the sympathetic head tilts and carefully worded condolences that made his chest feel like it was caving in. The routine he'd built was architectural in its precision. Wake at 5:30 a.m. Coffee, black, standing at the kitchen sink while reviewing his project schedules for the day. Civil engineer work that could mostly be done remotely, which meant he could be there when Noah's bus arrived at 3:15 p.m. Homework at the kitchen table. Dinner, usually something involving pasta or chicken, the reliable staples of single-father cooking. Bath time at 7. Stories at 7:30, the same worn copies of Where the Wild Things Are, and The Giving Tree that Sarah used to read in the voice that made Noah giggle. Then the hard part. The hours between 8:30, when Noah fell asleep, and whenever Lucas's mind finally surrendered to exhaustion. Those were the hours when the house felt too quiet, when memory had too much room to spread out and make itself comfortable. Lucas had become expert at filling those hours with productive emptiness. Online courses in structural dynamics, documentary series about engineering failures, anything that kept his mind occupied with problems that had solutions, unlike the primary problem of his life, which was that the person he'd planned to grow old with had died in a car accident 3 weeks before Noah's 4th birthday. He didn't date, didn't even consider it. The logistics alone seemed insurmountable. Finding a babysitter, making conversation, pretending to be someone whose life hadn't been split cleanly into before and after. But more than that, it felt like a betrayal of something he couldn't quite articulate. Sarah was gone, but the life they'd built together still felt present, like a room he couldn't bring himself to redecorate. Maya Alvarez moved into the house next door on a Saturday in early September, and Lucas noticed her the way he noticed most things in his environment, as a variable to be cataloged and then ignored. She was probably in her early 30s, drove a sun-faded Honda Civic with an art museum bumper sticker, and carried boxes labeled studio supplies in careful block letters. She had the kind of face that suggested she smiled easily, though Lucas made a point of not making eye contact long enough to confirm this hypothesis. Their first actual interaction happened 3 days later when Noah's soccer ball sailed over the fence into her backyard. Lucas stood at the property line, already composing the brief apologetic request he'd make, when Maya appeared on her back porch holding the ball. "This belongs to you, I'm guessing?" She had a warm voice, the kind with texture to it, like she'd laugh at the right joke, but wouldn't fake it for a bad one. "My son's," Lucas said, staying on his side of the fence. "Sorry about that." "Don't be. I was hoping to meet my neighbors eventually. I'm Maya." "Lucas. And that's Noah." He gestured toward his son, who was peering around Lucas's leg with the shyness he'd developed since Sarah died. Maya tossed the ball over the fence with an easy, athletic motion. Nice to meet you both. I'm still unpacking, but once I get settled, maybe Noah can come over and see my studio. I'm an art teacher, lots of weird supplies that kids find fascinating. That's kind of you, Lucas said in the tone he'd perfected for deflecting social overtures, polite but final. We should let you get back to it. He'd ushered Noah inside before the conversation could extend itself, missing the way Maya's expression shifted from friendly to thoughtfully curious as she watched them go. The next several weeks followed the established pattern of Maplewood Terrace neighborliness, polite waves, brief exchanges about the weather. Lucas noticed that Maya kept odd hours, lights in her studio burning past midnight, her car gone at times when most people would be at traditional jobs. He noticed that she ran most mornings, always the same route, always wearing headphones, and what looked like genuinely joyful expression, like someone who ran because she wanted to rather than because she should. He noticed these things the way an engineer notices load-bearing walls and foundation issues. Observational data, nothing more. Noah noticed different things. The lady next door has a cat, he announced one afternoon, nose pressed to the living room window. It's orange. Can we get a cat? We've talked about this, buddy. Pets are a big responsibility. She waves at me when I'm outside. She seems nice. I'm sure she is. Her name is Maya. That's a pretty name, right? Lucas looked up from his laptop. Noah was 6, but he had Sarah's perceptiveness, the ability to read subtext that most adults missed. It's a fine name. You always say fine when you don't want to talk about something. Homework, Noah. Let's focus. But Noah's observations continued with the relentless persistence of childhood curiosity. Maya had a wind chime that sounded like rain. Maya's studio window showed paintings of places Noah didn't recognize. Maya left her porch light on at night, which made their street feel less dark. The breaking point in Lucas's carefully maintained distance came on a Thursday evening in late October. He was making dinner, spaghetti, the third time that week, when he heard Noah's voice from the backyard, followed by an unfamiliar laugh. He moved to the window and felt his stomach drop. Noah was standing at the fence line, holding an animated conversation with Maya, who was kneeling in her garden with dirt-stained gloves and an expression of genuine delight at whatever his son was saying. Lucas was outside in seconds. Noah, inside, please. Both Noah and Maya looked up, startled by the edge in his voice. But Dad, I was just inside now. Noah's face crumpled in that way that still destroyed Lucas every time, but the boy obeyed, trudging toward the house with hunched shoulders. Maya stood slowly, and Lucas saw her reassessing him with eyes that were sharp despite their warmth. I'm sorry. He came over to show me a leaf he found. I should have sent him back immediately. It's fine, Lucas said, though his tone suggested it very much wasn't. He knows better than to bother people. He wasn't bothering me. Maya's voice stayed even, but something in it made Lucas feel like he was being carefully studied. He's a sweet kid. I appreciate that. We should go. He turned away before she could respond, already hating himself for the harshness, but unable to explain that it wasn't about Maya or even about Noah's safety. It was about the fact that watching his son laugh with a woman who wasn't Sarah made something in Lucas's chest feel like it was tearing. Inside, Noah sat at the kitchen table with tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, Daddy. I didn't mean to be bad. Lucas knelt in front of him, pulling his son into a hug that was probably too tight. You weren't bad, buddy. I'm not mad at you. He stopped, unsure how to explain something he barely understood himself. We need to be respectful of people's time, okay? Miss Maya is busy. She said she liked talking to me, Noah whispered into Lucas's shoulder. I know, but we still need to give people their space. That night, after Noah was asleep, Lucas sat in the dark living room and acknowledged the truth he'd been avoiding. Moving to Maplewood Terrace hadn't been a fresh start. It had been an attempt to build a life where nothing unexpected could happen, where every variable was controlled, where grief could be managed through sheer force of routine. Maya's presence next door felt like a threat to that control, not because she'd done anything wrong, but because she represented possibility. The possibility of connection, the possibility that life might ask him to feel something other than the careful numbness he'd cultivated. He was still sitting there at midnight when his phone buzzed. An email notification from Noah's school about an upcoming parent-teacher conference. A reminder that even in his fortress of routine, the world kept requiring his participation. The following week brought the kind of November rain that turned autumn leaves into slick mulch and made the walk from car to front door feel like a small aquatic journey. Lucas had just gotten Noah inside and was shaking water from his jacket when he noticed the package on their porch. A medium-sized cardboard box with no shipping label, just "For Noah," written in flowing script. Noah tore into it with 6-year-old enthusiasm before Lucas could investigate properly. Inside was a small watercolor set, the kind with actual brushes and quality paper, along with a note written in the same elegant handwriting. "I noticed you liked the leaf colors. Thought you might enjoy making your own. Maya." Lucas's first instinct was to march next door and return it. He didn't want his son getting attached. Didn't want the complexity of owing someone something, even something as simple as a thank you. But Noah was already opening the paint set with the kind of reverence usually reserved for Christmas morning, and Lucas couldn't bring himself to be the person who took that away. "Can I use them now, Dad? Please?" Lucas looked at his son's face, the first genuinely excited expression he'd seen in weeks, and felt his resistance crumble. "After dinner, and we're going to go thank Ms. Maya properly tomorrow." "Really?" Noah's eyes went wide. "Can I bring her a picture I make?" "That would be appropriate." The next afternoon, Lucas walked next door with Noah clutching a painting of what might have been a sunset or possibly a fire. It was hard to tell. He rang the doorbell with the same feeling he'd had before his first engineering presentation in graduate school, a sense of standing at the edge of something he couldn't control. Maya answered in paint-stained jeans and a thermal shirt, her hair pulled back in a careless bun. "Hey, neighbors. We wanted to thank you for the art supplies," Lucas said, the words coming out more formal than he'd intended. "It was very generous." "It was my pleasure. I have more supplies than I can use anyway." She crouched down to Noah's level. "Did you make something?" Noah thrust the painting forward. "It's the sunset we saw yesterday. Dad said the colors were striking." "Your dad is absolutely right, and you captured them beautifully. Can I keep this?" Noah's nod was so enthusiastic, Lucas worried about whiplash. "I'll hang it in my studio," Maya said, and the simple sincerity in her voice made Lucas's throat tight. "Would you like to see where I work? If it's okay with your dad?" Both she and Noah looked at Lucas with nearly identical, hopeful expressions, and he recognized a losing battle when he saw one. "Briefly, we have homework." Maya's studio was the converted garage, a space that smelled like turpentine and coffee, with north-facing windows that caught the afternoon light. Canvases in various states of completion leaned against every wall. Some were abstract explosions of color. Others were hyper-realistic portraits that seemed to stare directly into whoever viewed them. Noah moved through the space with wide eyes, asking questions faster than Maya could answer them. What was that color called? How did she make the paint shiny? Could he try the big brushes someday? Lucas stayed near the door, watching his son engage with the world in a way he hadn't since Sarah died, and feeling something uncomfortable shift in his chest. Maya was patient with every question, never talking down, treating Noah's curiosity with the same seriousness she might give an adult colleague. "You're good with kids," Lucas said when Noah was distracted by a jar of unusual brushes. Maya glanced over, and there was something knowing in her expression. "I teach middle school art. You develop patience or you find a different career." She paused. "Noah mentioned his mom passed away. I'm sorry." There it was. The acknowledgement Lucas both dreaded and appreciated, delivered without the usual suffocating sympathy. "Thank you. It's just him and you?" "Yes." "That must be hard. You're doing a good job, though. He's a great kid." Lucas didn't know how to respond to that. The compliments people offered about his parenting always felt hollow, as if they were praising him for doing the bare minimum of keeping a child alive and functionally happy. He changed the subject. "Your work is impressive. Do you show anywhere?" "A few galleries in the city. Mostly I teach and do commissions. It pays the bills and lets me live how I want to." She tilted her head slightly. "What do you do?" "Civil engineering, bridge design mostly. I work from home." "That explains the precision," Maya said with a slight smile. I noticed your garage is organized like a surgical suite. Habit. Not a criticism, just an observation. Noah interrupted before Lucas could figure out what that meant. Miss Maya, do you paint people? Sometimes. Why? Could you paint my dad? He doesn't have any pictures of himself, just of mom and me together. The observation hit Lucas like cold water. Noah was right. After Sarah died, Lucas had removed most photos of himself from the house, unable to look at his own face in pictures that reminded him of what he'd lost. He told himself it was about making space for Noah's grief, but the truth was more selfish. He couldn't stand visual evidence of his own before and after. Maya's eyes found Lucas's, and in them he saw understanding that went beyond the surface. That's a big request, Noah. Portraits take a long time. Maybe just a small one? We should go, Lucas said quickly. You've been generous enough with your time. On the walk back across the lawn, Noah chattered about everything he'd seen, but Lucas was quiet, unsettled by how easily his son had connected with someone new, and by his own reaction to that connection, a complicated tangle of gratitude, guilt, and something that might have been loneliness if he'd let himself name it. That night, after Noah was in bed, Lucas found himself looking at the house next door, at the light in Maya's studio window. He thought about what Noah had said about pictures, about the way his son was moving forward, while Lucas stayed locked in place, and about the careful walls he'd built that suddenly felt less like protection and more like a prison. His phone was in his hand before he'd consciously decided to use it. He found himself typing a message he immediately second-guessed. Thank you again for the art supplies and for being kind to Noah. It means more than you probably know. The response came quickly. He's easy to be kind to, you both are. Lucas stared at those words for a long time, unsure why they affected him, why the simple acknowledgement of his own humanity felt like something he'd been waiting to hear. He didn't respond, but he didn't delete the message either, and when he finally went to bed, it was the first night in months he fell asleep without reviewing structural calculations in his head. The next few weeks settled into a new rhythm. Maya wasn't intrusive, but she was present in a way that became harder to ignore. She'd wave when she saw them in the yard. Leave the occasional drawing from Noah on their doorstep with encouraging notes. Bring in their garbage cans on collection day without making a production of it. Small gestures that required nothing in return, but somehow made Lucas's carefully controlled world feel less isolating. Noah bloomed under the attention. He started spending more time drawing, would run to the window when he heard Maya's car pull in, talked about her at dinner with the kind of enthusiasm he usually reserved for dinosaur facts. Lucas told himself it was good that Noah had another positive adult in his life, that it was healthy for his son to form attachments. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he was losing control of something, that the neat boundaries he'd established were becoming permeable in ways he hadn't authorized. The shift came on a Friday night in late November. Lucas was finishing up a project proposal when his laptop died without warning, taking 3 hours of unsaved work with it. The client presentation was Monday morning. He had a backup desktop in the garage office, but it hadn't been updated in months and would take hours to configure properly. He sat at the dark kitchen table, head in his hands, feeling the kind of overwhelm that came from being a single parent with no backup plan, no partner to tag in when things fell apart. Sarah would have known what to do. Sarah always had a solution, a perspective, a way of making disasters feel manageable. The knock at the door startled him. Through the window he could see Maya on the porch, holding what looked like a casserole dish. He opened the door. "Hi." "I made too much lasagna," she said, which was obviously a lie, given the way she was looking at him, the careful assessment of someone who'd noticed the lights going off and on erratically and correctly diagnosed a crisis. "Thought you and Noah might want some." "That's—" Lucas started to deflect, to say they were fine, but something in him broke. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was the genuine concern in her eyes. "My laptop just crashed. I have a presentation Monday and everything's gone." "Do you have a backup?" "Yes, but it needs updating and configuring, and Noah wakes up at 6 tomorrow, and I just—" He stopped, aware he was spiraling in front of someone who was essentially a stranger. Maya didn't flinch. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put this in your fridge. You're going to show me your backup system. I'm surprisingly good with technology. Teaching middle schoolers forces you to be. We'll get you functional tonight. and tomorrow you can work while Noah's at school. I can't ask you to. You didn't ask. I offered. There's a difference. She moved past him into the kitchen with the confidence of someone who'd already decided how this was going to go. Show me the garage. For the next 3 hours, Maya worked with his desktop while Lucas handled the data recovery, and they fell into an easy rhythm that surprised him. She didn't make small talk or try to force conversation, just worked efficiently, asked intelligent questions, made suggestions that actually solved problems. Around 11, with the system mostly restored, she stretched and looked at him with tired eyes. You're going to be okay for Monday. The data's all there, just needs reformatting. I don't know how to thank you. Feed me some of that lasagna I supposedly brought over. I'm starving, and I actually have no food at my house because I spent all day painting and forgot to shop. They sat at his kitchen table eating reheated pasta, and for the first time since Sarah died, Lucas had an extended conversation with another adult that didn't feel like work. Maya talked about her students, about the particular challenges of teaching creativity to 13-year-olds who'd been trained to believe in single correct answers. Lucas found himself talking about bridge design, about the satisfaction of solving problems that had physical consequences, elegant solutions to weight and force and span. It's like art, Maya said at one point, just with math instead of color. I've never thought of it that way. That's because engineers and artists are supposed to be different tribes, but we're not really. We're both trying to make things that work and matter and last. At midnight, she stood to leave, and Lucas walked her to the door with the strange feeling that something significant had shifted, though he couldn't name what. Thank you, he said again. Really, you saved me tonight. We're neighbors. It's what we do. She paused on the porch, looking back at him. And Lucas? You don't have to do everything alone. I know you're used to it, but you're allowed to accept help sometimes. After she left, Lucas stood in the quiet house and felt the first crack in the armor he'd built. Not large enough to call a breakthrough, but present, real, unavoidable. The following week, Noah came down with a stomach bug that kept him home from school for 3 days. Lucas managed it the way he managed everything, efficiently, competently, with minimal drama. But on day 2, when he realized they were out of the electrolyte drinks Noah could keep down, and the delivery services had nothing available for hours, he found himself texting Maya before he could second-guess it. This is going to sound ridiculous, but do you have any Pedialyte or Gatorade? Noah's sick and I can't leave him to run to the store. The response was immediate. On it. Give me 20 minutes. She showed up with a bag full of supplies, drinks, crackers, a coloring book, and a small stuffed animal that she handed to Noah with a conspiratorial smile. This is Pablo. He's a recovery penguin, very good at making sick kids feel better. Noah clutched the penguin with the kind of instant attachment that children form with objects that appear at exactly the right moment. Thank you, Miss Maya. You're welcome, sweetheart. Listen to your dad and drink lots of fluids, okay? At the door, Lucas tried to offer payment for the supplies, but Maya waved him off. Neighbors, she said simply. That's all this is. But it wasn't all it was, and Lucas knew it. This was the beginning of something he'd been avoiding, a connection that went beyond polite coexistence. And the terrifying part was how good it felt to not be quite so alone. November turned into December, and Maplewood Terrace decorated for the holidays with the same restrained enthusiasm it applied to everything else. White lights on gutters, wreaths on doors, nothing ostentatious but enough to acknowledge the season. Lucas had been dreading the holidays. Last year, he and Noah had flown to his parents' house in Arizona, which had provided enough distraction and family chaos to get through it. This year, his parents were on a cruise, and he'd told himself it would be fine. Just the two of them, simple and quiet. But as the decorations appeared on neighboring houses, Noah started asking questions. Why didn't they have lights? Could they get a tree? Did Maya celebrate Christmas? Lucas had been putting up minimal decorations, a small tree, some of Sarah's ornaments, when Maya appeared in their driveway carrying a ladder. Need help? She called. I've got it under control. I can see that. She gestured to where he was awkwardly trying to hang lights while balancing on a stepladder that was clearly too short for the job. I have an extension ladder. Want to borrow it? 20 minutes later, they were working together. Lucas on the ladder, Maya feeding him the light strands and offering opinions on placement. Noah supervised from the lawn, shouting encouragement and suggestions that were mostly impractical but entirely enthusiastic. Little more to the left, Maya called. Perfect. You know, for an engineer, you have pretty good aesthetic sense. For an artist, you're pretty good at practical problem solving. We contain multitudes. She grinned up at him. Are you guys doing anything for Christmas? Just us. Quiet day at home. Well, if you want company for dinner, my door's open. I usually make too much food anyway, since my family's all in California. Lucas climbed down from the ladder, aware of Noah watching them with hopeful eyes. We'll think about it. No pressure. The offer stands either way. That night, Noah brought it up during their bedtime routine. Can we have Christmas dinner with Miss Maya? I thought you wanted it to be just us. I did, but Noah twisted the stuffed penguin's flippers. I think Mom would like Ms. Maya. She's nice, like Mom was nice. The observation hit Lucas in the center of his chest. What makes you say that? She sees people. The way Mom used to, like really sees them, not just looks at them. Lucas had no answer for that kind of wisdom from a 6-year-old. He kissed Noah's forehead and turned out the light, then sat in the dark hallway outside his son's room, trying to understand when everything had gotten so complicated. December 20th brought the winter art show at Noah's school, and Lucas attended the way he attended all school functions, punctually, appropriately dressed, prepared to be supportive while avoiding prolonged social interaction with other parents. The gymnasium was full of children's artwork displayed on portable walls, and Lucas dutifully followed Noah to his contribution, a watercolor of their house that actually showed remarkable skill for a 6-year-old. Ms. Maya helped me with the perspective, Noah explained proudly. She showed me how to make things look far away. It's really good, buddy. There she is. Noah waved across the room, and Lucas turned to see Maya talking with a group of students and parents. She was wearing a green dress that somehow made her look both professional and approachable, and when she saw them, her face lit up in a way that made Lucas's pulse do something unexpected. She excused herself and came over. Noah, your piece turned out amazing. You should be really proud. Dad says it's good too. Your dad has excellent taste. Her eyes met Lucas's with a warmth that felt personal, specific to him, and Lucas found himself unable to look away. They talked for a few minutes about the show, about Noah's progress, about the holidays approaching. Normal conversation that somehow felt charged with something Lucas couldn't identify. Other parents drifted over, and Lucas watched Maya interact with them. Friendly but boundaried, professional but warm. He noticed how she didn't let anyone monopolize her time, how she made sure to acknowledge every child, how she moved through the social requirements of her job with the same grace she applied to everything else. On the way home, Noah fell asleep in the back seat, and Lucas drove through the dark streets of Maplewood Terrace thinking about connection, about how his life had become so much smaller than he'd ever intended, about how terrified he was of letting it expand again. The message came on December 22nd at 11:47 p.m., when Lucas was doing what he did most nights, sitting in the dark living room, laptop open, pretending to work while actually just existing in the space between one day and the next. His phone buzzed, a text from Maya. Are you still awake? Yes. Can I send you something? It might be weird, but I want to show you anyway. Lucas's heart rate picked up for reasons he didn't examine. Okay. I painted something for you and Noah. I hope this doesn't cross a line. Then the image loaded, and Lucas's carefully constructed world cracked wide open. The painting filled his phone screen with colors that seemed to pulse with their own light. Maya had rendered him and Noah sitting on their back porch steps, captured in that golden hour just before sunset, when everything looks like it's been dipped in honey. Noah was leaning against Lucas's side, both of them gazing at something beyond the frame. The technique was masterful, realistic enough to be recognizable, but softened with an impressionistic quality that made the whole image feel like a memory rather than a photograph. But it was the third figure that made Lucas's breath catch and hold. She stood slightly behind them, one hand resting gently on Lucas's shoulder, the other reaching toward Noah's hair in a gesture so familiar it hurt. Maya had painted her in translucent layers, present but ethereal, as if she were made of light and memory. Sarah. Somehow, without ever having seen a photograph, without ever having met her, Maya had captured something essential about the woman Lucas had loved. The tilt of her head, the protective tenderness in her posture. The way she existed in relation to them, not separate, not gone, but transformed into something that remained. Lucas didn't realize he was crying until the tears hit his phone screen, blurring the image. 3 years of carefully controlled grief came pouring out in great shuddering sobs that he muffled against his arm so he wouldn't wake Noah. He cried for Sarah, for the future they'd lost, for the 1,000 small moments that would never happen. He cried for Noah growing up without his mother, for every milestone she'd miss, for the way his son's memories of her would eventually fade into the stories Lucas told. He cried for himself, for the loneliness he'd been denying, for the weight of doing everything alone, for the terror of eventually forgetting what her voice sounded like. And underneath it all, he cried because someone had seen them, really seen them, and hadn't looked away. His phone buzzed again. "Lucas, are you okay? I'm sorry if I overstepped." He tried to type a response, but his hands were shaking too badly. Finally, he managed, "Can you come over? Now? Please." "I'll be right there." Lucas stood on unsteady legs and went to the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face and trying to pull himself together. He looked like hell, eyes red and swollen, face blotchy, 3 years of suppressed emotion written clearly across his features. But Maya had already seen deeper than that. The painting proved it. The knock came soft and cautious. Lucas opened the door to find Maya in flannel pajama pants and an oversized sweatshirt, her hair loose around her shoulders, concern evident in every line of her body. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I should have asked first. I shouldn't have just... Come in." His voice was rough from crying. "Please." She stepped inside and he closed the door, suddenly aware that this was the first time she'd been in his house after dark. The first time they'd been truly alone together, without the buffer of daylight or Noah's presence. The living room felt smaller with her in it, more intimate. "The painting," Lucas started, then had to stop and collect himself. "How did you know what she looked like?" Maya's expression softened. "I didn't, not really. But Noah talks about his mom sometimes when we're working on art projects. Little things. She had curly hair, she always wore the silver bracelet. She made him feel safe. And I see her in you, in the way you move through the world, in the spaces you leave around yourself like you're making room for someone. I just painted what felt right." "It's perfect," Lucas whispered. "It's exactly her. The way she'd stand close but not crowding. The way she'd touch us like she was making sure we were real." He had to stop again, overwhelmed. "I have hundreds of photos, but this is the first thing that's made me feel like she's actually still here somehow." Maya's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "That's what I was hoping, not to make you sad, but to make you see that she doesn't have to be erased for you to move forward. She's part of your foundation. She's in Noah's smile and your careful way of loving him. She's woven through everything." "I've been so afraid," Lucas said, the words coming out before he could stop them. "Afraid that if I let her go even a little bit, I'll lose what's left. Afraid that if I'm happy again, it means she didn't matter. Afraid that..." He stopped, but Maya was watching him with such patient understanding that the rest came tumbling out. "Afraid that feeling something for someone else would be a betrayal of everything we had." The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither of them had explicitly acknowledged until this moment. Maya didn't pretend not to understand. "Can I tell you something?" she asked quietly. Lucas nodded. "My dad died when I was 14. Cancer. My mom was devastated. They'd been together since high school. She loved him so completely that I didn't think she'd ever recover." Maya sat down on the couch, and Lucas found himself sitting beside her, maintaining a careful distance that felt both necessary and insufficient. She grieved for 2 years, really grieved, the kind that takes up all the space in a person. And then she met Robert at a grief support group. He'd lost his wife. They understood each other's pain in a way nobody else could. Did she remarry? Eventually. And you know what she told me? She said loving Robert didn't mean she loved my dad less. It meant her heart had made more room. That love isn't a finite resource that gets used up. It grows and changes and adapts, but it doesn't erase what came before. Maya looked at him directly, her eyes honest and clear. Your capacity to love Sarah completely doesn't mean you can't love again. It means you know how to love deeply. That's not a liability, Lucas. It's a gift. Lucas felt something shift in his chest, like a locked door finding its key. I don't know how to do this. Any of this. I've been on autopilot for 3 years. You don't have to know how. You just have to be willing to try. They sat in silence for a while, the kind of quiet that felt full rather than empty. Lucas looked at the painting on his phone again, seeing it differently now. Not as a reminder of loss, but as permission to hold the past and present simultaneously. Sarah would always be part of him, part of Noah, part of the foundation of who they were. But that didn't mean there was no room for anything else. "Why did you move here?" he asked suddenly. "To Maplewood Terrace, I mean. You don't seem like someone who'd choose this kind of quiet on purpose." Maya smiled. "That obvious? You have energy. This place is designed to suppress it. Fair assessment." She pulled her knees up to her chest, getting comfortable in a way that suggested she wasn't planning to leave soon. "I was living in the city, teaching at a private school that paid well but was slowly suffocating my soul. All these wealthy parents pushing their kids to be perfect, to achieve at the expense of actually enjoying anything. I was spending more time managing parental expectations than teaching art, and I was dating someone who—" She paused, choosing words carefully. "Who wanted me to be smaller than I am, quieter, more convenient. What happened? I left. The relationship, the job, the whole life I'd built that didn't actually fit me. Came out here because I could afford a house with a studio space and because nobody knew me well enough to have expectations about who I should be." She looked around his living room. "I thought I wanted isolation. Turns out, I just wanted the freedom to choose my connections instead of having them forced on me. And then you got stuck next to the world's most antisocial neighbor." Maya laughed, and the sound was warm enough to fill all the cold spaces in Lucas's house. "You're not antisocial. You're protecting yourself. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes. Antisocial people don't notice when their neighbor's car won't start and casually leave jumper cables on their porch with a note. Antisocial people don't shovel the sidewalk in front of both houses, even though they pretend they're just doing their own. You're not disconnected, Lucas. You're just scared of connection, and that's—" She stopped herself. "That's what?" "That's completely understandable given what you've been through." Lucas turned to face her fully, something bold moving through him, some reckless need to be fully honest for the first time in years. "I'm scared of you." Maya's breath caught slightly. "What?" "Not of you personally, of what you represent. You make me feel things I've worked very hard not to feel. You make Noah happy in a way that reminds me he's been missing something I can't provide alone. You see through every defense I have, and I don't know what to do with that." "What do you want to do with it?" The question hung between them, loaded with possibility. Lucas thought about the easy answer, the safe answer, the one that would maintain his carefully constructed boundaries. Then he thought about the painting, about Sarah rendered in light, about his son growing up watching his father choose fear over life. "I want to stop being so afraid," he said finally. "I want to trust that feeling. Something doesn't mean I'm losing something else. I want—" He stopped. Awareness flooding through him of how close they were sitting, of the way Maya was looking at him like he was someone worth knowing, not just someone to be careful around. "I want to know if this is real, or if I'm projecting because you're the first person who's been kind to me in years." "What if it's both?" Maya asked softly. "What if I'm kind to you because I see something real, and you're responding to that because it is real, not just because you're starved for connection? How do I know the difference?" "You probably can't. Not yet. That's the risk, Lucas. That's what makes it worth anything." He should have pulled back, should have thanked her for coming over, for the painting, for her honesty, and sent her home before this went somewhere neither of them could easily return from. Instead, he heard himself ask, "What do you see when you look at me?" Maya was quiet for a long moment, her eyes studying his face with the same intensity she probably brought to her paintings. "I see someone who loves fiercely and completely, someone who's carrying more weight than any person should have to carry alone. I see a good father, a talented engineer, a man who's forgotten that he's allowed to want things for himself." She paused. "And I see someone who's terrified that if he stops holding everything so tightly, it'll all fall apart." "You're not wrong. But here's what else I see." She shifted slightly closer, and Lucas's heart rate kicked up. "I see someone capable of extraordinary courage, You get up every day and take care of your son, even when you're drowning. You've built a whole life on your own from absolute devastation. You haven't given up, even when it would have been easier. That's not weakness, Lucas. That's strength. It doesn't feel like strength. It never does from the inside. They were close enough now that Lucas could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, could smell the faint scent of paint, and something floral, her shampoo maybe. He thought about what it would mean to close the distance between them, to take the risk she was offering. He thought about Sarah, about whether she'd want him to stay frozen in grief, and knew with sudden certainty that she wouldn't. Sarah had loved life too fiercely to want him to stop living it, but knowing something intellectually and being ready to act on it were different things. I need time, he said, to process this, all of it, the painting, this conversation, what I'm feeling. I'm not ready to. I know, Maya said gently. I'm not asking you to be ready. I'm just asking you to consider that you don't have to do everything alone, that letting someone in isn't a betrayal, that you're allowed to heal. She stood then, and Lucas felt the loss of her proximity like a physical thing. At the door, she turned back. Keep the painting. It's yours. Both of yours. She smiled, and there was sadness in it, but also hope. And Lucas? For what it's worth, I think Sarah would be proud of the father you've become. I think she'd want you to be happy. After she left, Lucas sat with his phone for a long time, looking at the painting, seeing it layer by layer. The technical skill, the emotional intelligence, the way Maya had somehow understood that he needed permission to hold his past and his present in the same space. He thought about sending the image to his parents, to Sarah's mother, to the few friends he'd maintained sporadic contact with over the years. But this felt private, sacred even. A message meant specifically for him. He saved it as his phone wallpaper. The first time in 3 years he'd replaced the photo of Sarah and Noah at the beach that had lived there since her death. Not erasing her, never erasing her. Just making room for the truth that grief and life could coexist. The next morning was Saturday, and Noah came bouncing into Lucas's room at 7 with the stuffed penguin tucked under his arm. Dad, can we make pancakes, the special kind with chocolate chips? Lucas pulled his son into bed with him, grateful for the simple comfort of Noah's warm weight against his side. Sure, buddy, the special kind. You look sad. Are you okay? Out of the mouths of children came the observations adults spent years learning to suppress. I'm okay. Just thinking about a lot of things. About Mom? Yeah, and about other stuff too. Noah was quiet for a moment, then said with the blunt honesty of 6-year-olds, Miss Maya is nice. I like her. I know you do. Do you like her? Lucas considered how to answer that, how much truth a 6-year-old could handle about the complicated mess of adult emotions. Yes, I like her. Good, because I think she likes us too. She made us a painting. She did. Did you see it yet? No. Can I? Lucas pulled up the image on his phone and watched Noah's face as he processed it. His son's expression moved through several emotions: recognition, confusion, understanding, and finally something that looked like relief. That's Mom, Noah said, pointing to the translucent figure. Yes. She's still with us, even though we can't see her. That's right. Miss Maya is really good at painting true things. Lucas pulled his son closer, overwhelmed by the simple wisdom. She really is. They made pancakes together, the kitchen filling with the smell of chocolate and butter and the easy comfort of weekend mornings. Lucas let Noah pour the chocolate chips directly into the batter, making each pancake absurdly sweet, breaking the rules in small ways that felt like practice for bigger changes. Over breakfast, Noah chattered about school, about the winter break coming up, about whether they could build a snowman if it snowed. Normal kid things that anchored Lucas in the present, reminded him that life continued regardless of emotional breakthroughs or late-night conversations. Can we invite Miss Maya for Christmas dinner? Noah asked through a mouthful of pancake. We'll see. That means you're thinking about it. When did you get so smart? Mom always said I got it from you. The casual reference to Sarah made Lucas's chest tight, but not in the devastating way it used to. More like an ache, familiar and manageable. Your mom was pretty smart herself. I know, Miss Maya reminds me of her sometimes. Not the same, but Noah struggled for words. Like they'd be friends if they could meet. Lucas thought about that, about the two women who'd changed his life in such different ways. Sarah with her fierce joy and practical wisdom, Maya with her quiet perceptiveness and creative courage. They would have liked each other, he thought. They would have understood each other. The day passed in the comfortable rhythm of father and son. A trip to the library, lunch at the diner Noah loved, a stop at the park even though it was cold enough to see their breath. Lucas felt lighter somehow, like the conversation with Maya had released pressure he hadn't known he was carrying. He noticed things he'd been too numb to see, the way the winter sun turned everything silver, the sound of Noah's laughter when he went down the slide, the feeling of cold air in his lungs. That evening, after Noah was in bed, Lucas found himself at his computer opening the folders he'd avoided for 3 years. Photos of Sarah. Hundreds of them, documenting their life together from their first date through Noah's early years. He'd stopped looking at them because it hurt too much, because seeing her face made the absence unbearable. But tonight, prompted by Maya's painting, he let himself remember. Really remember. Not just the grief of losing her, but the gift of having had her. Their wedding day when she'd laughed so hard during the vows she'd had to start over twice. The morning she'd shown him the positive pregnancy test, her eyes bright with terror and joy. The 1,000 ordinary moments, grocery shopping, watching movies, arguing about whose turn it was to do dishes, that had made up the fabric of their marriage. He cried again, but differently this time. Not the sharp, desperate grief of the night before, but something gentler. Tears that felt like release rather than drowning. He let himself feel grateful for what they'd had instead of destroyed by what he'd lost. And he thought about what Maya had said, about hearts making more room, about love not being finite. It seemed impossible that he could feel this much for Sarah and still have space for anything else. But then again, he'd thought it was impossible to survive losing her. And here he was, still breathing, still parenting, still capable of feeling something other than pain. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Checking in. You okay after last night? Lucas stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, Yes, thank you for everything. The painting didn't cross a line. It did, but in a good way. I needed the line crossed. There was a pause, then, I'm glad. Noah showed me his leaf collection today when I was getting my mail. He's very proud of his organizational system. Lucas smiled despite himself. He gets that from me. The precision or the pride? Both, probably. Good traits. Keep them. They texted back and forth for the next hour, the conversation flowing easily between serious and playful, touching on everything from Noah's leaf collection to Maya's upcoming art show to Lucas's current bridge project. It was the kind of conversation Lucas hadn't had in years. Genuine connection without agenda, two people getting to know each other because they wanted to, not because circumstance forced it. Around midnight, Maya sent, I should let you sleep, but I'm really glad we talked last night. Me too. And Lucas, take your time. I'm not going anywhere. The reassurance should have felt like pressure, but instead it felt like freedom. Permission to move at his own pace, to figure out what he wanted without rushing. Lucas fell asleep that night with his phone on the nightstand, Maya's painting glowing softly on the screen, Sarah's memory held gently in his heart instead of clutched desperately against his chest. Sunday brought the kind of winter morning that made everything look new, fresh snow overnight, sun bright enough to make it all sparkle. Noah was at the window before Lucas had coffee made, pressing his face against the glass. Dad, it snowed! Can we build something? After breakfast. They spent the morning in the yard building what started as a snowman and evolved into something more architecturally ambitious, a snow fort with walls and windows, and a flag made from one of Noah's old t-shirts. Lucas found himself laughing at his son's increasingly elaborate design specifications, channeling his engineering brain into the structural integrity of frozen water. We need support beams, Noah announced seriously, so it doesn't fall down. You're absolutely right. What should we use? Sticks. Big ones. They were gathering branches from the yard when Maya emerged from her house carrying 2 thermoses and a plate of cookies covered in plastic wrap. She wore a puffy jacket and boots, her hair hidden under a knit hat, looking younger and more carefree than Lucas had seen her. I made hot chocolate, and thought you might need structural engineering consultants. She held up the thermoses. Also cookies, because snow forts require proper fuel. Noah ran to her immediately. Ms. Maya, we're building a fort. Dad says it needs support beams. Your dad is a smart man. Mind if I help? She looked at Lucas, and he saw the question beneath the question. Was this okay? Was she inserting herself too much? Could he handle having her here in his space, in his son's space, being part of their world? We could use the expertise, Lucas said, and the smile that broke across Maya's face made his chest feel warm in a way that had nothing to do with exertion. They worked together for the next hour, Maya proving surprisingly knowledgeable about snow construction techniques. She showed Noah how to pack snow for maximum stability, helped Lucas reinforce the walls with strategic stick placement, and managed to make the whole thing fun rather than a competition for perfection. Where did you learn this? Lucas asked as they stepped back to admire their work. Michigan childhood. You either learn to build good snow forts or you suffer through winter with nothing to do. She poured hot chocolate into disposable cups. My brothers and I used to have elaborate snow fort wars, very serious business. You have brothers? 3. All older, all insufferable, all convinced they needed to protect me from everything. She handed Lucas a cup. Probably part of why I learned to be so independent. Couldn't let them think I needed their help. Noah was already inside the fort, declaring it the best one ever made, and insisting they take photos to document the achievement. Maya pulled out her phone and captured images of Noah posed like a victorious general, then turned the camera on Lucas. Your turn. I don't do photos. Since when? Since... Lucas stopped, aware that Noah was listening. A while. Maya lowered the phone, understanding flickering across her face. Fair enough. Noah, how about one with you and your dad together? They squeezed into the fort, Noah climbing onto Lucas's lap, and Maya snapped several pictures from different angles. Perfect. I'll text them to you. The images arrived while they were cleaning up, Lucas and Noah snow-dusted and grinning, the fort impressive in the background, both of them looking genuinely happy. Lucas stared at them, seeing what Maya must see. Not a broken man and his motherless child, but a father and son having a good day. Living, not just surviving. He set one as his home screen right next to the painting. That evening, after Noah was in bed and Lucas was doing the dishes, his phone rang. Maya's name on the screen made his pulse jump. Hey, he answered. Hey, yourself. I wanted to ask you something, but it's totally fine to say no. Okay. My art class is doing a family day thing on Thursday, last day before winter break. Kids are bringing parents or important adults to do a collaborative project. Noah mentioned you work from home, so I thought maybe... She paused. Would you want to come? He doesn't have to participate if you'd rather not, but I thought I'd offer. Lucas's immediate instinct was to decline. School events, other parents, forced social interaction, all things he generally avoided. But then he thought about Noah's face when he talked about Maya's art class, about the painting that had cracked him open, about the promise he'd made to himself to stop being so afraid. What time? He asked. 2:00. About an hour and a half. I'll be there. The surprise in Maya's voice was evident. Really? Really? Fair warning, I'm terrible at art. That's what makes it fun. See you Thursday, Lucas. After hanging up, Lucas sat with the strange feeling of having committed to something social, something that would require him to interact with other parents and teachers and be present in a way he usually avoided. 3 months ago, he would have made an excuse. 3 weeks ago, he would have panicked. But sitting in his quiet kitchen with Maya's painting on his phone and photos of his snow-covered son on his home screen, Lucas felt something that might have been anticipation. Thursday afternoon, Lucas found himself in Maya's classroom surrounded by middle schoolers and their parents, everyone paired off at tables covered with art supplies. Noah had insisted they sit near the front, and now Lucas was acutely aware of Maya moving through the room, explaining the project. Collaborative paintings where one person started and the other finished, neither knowing what the other would contribute. The point is trust, Maya told the group, her teacher voice confident and warm. You have to trust your partner to build on what you create, to see your vision and add to it rather than override it. Lucas watched her work the room, saw how the students responded to her, respectful but comfortable, like she'd managed to be an authority without being authoritarian. She caught his eye once and smiled, and something in Lucas's chest felt like it was expanding, making room for something new. The project itself was harder than he'd expected. Noah went first, creating an abstract background in blues and greens that reminded Lucas of the ocean. Then Lucas had to build on it without destroying what his son had made. He added simple geometric shapes, trying to complement rather than dominate, and when they stepped back to look at the finished piece, Noah beamed. "It's us, Dad. See? The blue is like your organized brain and the green is like me being wild, and together it's really cool," Maya said, appearing beside them. She studied their painting with genuine interest. "You've got a good eye for composition, Lucas. Very balanced." "I just tried not to ruin what he started." "That's harder than it sounds. Most people want to impose their vision. You listened to his." After class, while Noah ran around with some of his friends, Maya walked Lucas to the door. "Thank you for coming. It meant a lot to him." "It was good for me too," Lucas admitted. "I don't do this kind of thing enough." "You could. Do it more, I mean." She leaned against the door frame. "You're better with people than you think you are. Or you're just good at making people feel comfortable. Maybe both are true." They stood there for a moment, the hallway emptying around them, and Lucas felt the pull again, that gravitational force drawing him toward this woman who'd somehow become essential to his life in the span of a few months. He wanted to say something meaningful, something that captured what she'd given him, but the words felt inadequate. "The painting," he started. "I look at it every day, sometimes 5, 10 times a day. He struggled. "It's helped me in ways I don't know how to explain." Maya's eyes softened. "You don't have to explain. I'm just glad it helped." "I want to try," Lucas said, the words surprising him even as he spoke them. "To move forward, to let people in. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I want to try." "That's all anyone can do." Noah came running up then, breaking the moment, chattering about his friends and the project, and could they get pizza for dinner. Lucas let himself be pulled back into the practical world of parenting, but he carried Maya's words with him like a talisman. That's all anyone can do. Try. It seemed manageable when she said it like that. Not a mountain to climb, just a series of small steps forward. That night, Lucas made a decision. He texted Maya, "We'd like to have you over for Christmas dinner, if the offer's still open." The response came quickly. "I'd love that. Thank you." And just like that, Lucas Reed took another step toward a future he was finally ready to imagine. Christmas Eve arrived with the kind of cold that made breath visible and turned Maplewood Terrace into something from a greeting card. Lucas stood in his kitchen at 6 in the morning, staring at the turkey he'd bought with alarming optimism about his cooking abilities. He'd watched 3 YouTube videos on proper roasting technique, made detailed notes about timing and temperature, and still felt completely out of his depth. Sarah had always handled the holiday meals. Lucas had been the one who set the table, who kept Noah entertained while she worked her magic in the kitchen, who cleaned up afterward. The division of labor had felt natural then, comfortable. Now it felt like one more thing he didn't know how to do alone. His phone buzzed, a text from Maya sent at 5:47 a.m. "If you're awake and panicking about the turkey, I'm awake and happy to talk you through it. No judgment." Lucas found himself smiling despite his anxiety. "How did you know?" "Because I've seen inside your refrigerator when you've borrowed eggs. You're a competent human who somehow survives on takeout containers and the same 3 meals on rotation. A whole turkey is outside your operational parameters. Your assessment is accurate. Want help? I can come over early. I make a mean stuffing and my pie skills are legendary in certain circles." Lucas typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on honesty. "I don't want to impose, but yes, I'm in over my head here. Be there in 20. Put coffee on." She arrived wearing jeans and a sweater that looked hand-knitted, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, carrying grocery bags that suggested she'd been planning this rescue operation before he'd even accepted help. The sight of her standing on his doorstep with supplies and a knowing smile made something in Lucas's chest feel both tight and expansive at once. "I may have assumed you'd need backup," she admitted, stepping inside and heading straight for the kitchen like she belonged there. I grabbed ingredients for sides this morning. Hope that's okay. It's more than okay. It's... Lucas stopped, watching her unpack fresh herbs, butter, vegetables he couldn't name, a bottle of wine. Why are you doing all this? Maya looked up from arranging items on his counter. Because I want to. Because you invited me into your Christmas, and that means something. Because cooking alone is depressing and cooking with people is fun. She paused, meeting his eyes. And because I think you've been doing everything alone for too long. And maybe it's time someone showed up for you the way you show up for Noah every single day. The words hit Lucas somewhere deep, in a place he'd armored so thoroughly he'd forgotten it could still feel. I don't know what to say to that. You don't have to say anything. Just tell me where your cutting boards are, and let's save this turkey from certain doom. They fell into an easy rhythm, Maya directing operations with the casual competence of someone who actually understood how kitchens worked. She showed Lucas how to prepare the bird, walking him through each step without making him feel incompetent. They worked side by side, her explaining technique while he followed instructions, and Lucas found himself relaxing into the domesticity of it in a way he hadn't since Sarah died. You're better at this than you think, Maya said, as Lucas successfully trussed the turkey on his second attempt. You just need confidence. Or a better teacher. I'm a good teacher, but you're a good student. There's a difference. She started chopping vegetables with the kind of knife skills that suggested years of practice. My mom insisted all of us learn to cook. Said it was a basic life skill, not a gendered thing. My brothers complained, but they all ended up being decent in the kitchen. The ones who thought they needed to protect you? Those exact ones. Turns out protecting someone doesn't mean doing everything for them. It means teaching them to handle things themselves. She glanced at him. Something I wish more people understood. Lucas thought about his own approach to parenting, how he'd been so focused on shielding Noah from pain that he might be preventing him from learning resilience. I worry I'm doing the opposite with Noah, protecting him so much he doesn't learn to cope. You're doing fine with Noah. He's happy, adjusted, thriving. You give him stability and love and show up consistently. That's not overprotection. That's good parenting. He's too attached to you. The words came out before Lucas could stop them, blunt and honest and revealing more than he'd intended. Maya's hand stilled on the cutting board. Is that a problem? She asked carefully. I don't know. Maybe. What happens when... Lucas stopped, unsure how to finish that sentence. When you get tired of us, when you meet someone who doesn't come with this much baggage, when you realize that being in our lives means inheriting all our unresolved grief? When what? Maya prompted gently. When this becomes too much. When you realize that being our friend means dealing with a widower who doesn't know how to move forward and a kid who's desperately searching for maternal figures anywhere he can find them. Maya set down her knife and turned to face him fully. Lucas, I need you to hear something. I'm not here because I feel sorry for you. I'm not here because Noah needs a mother figure, and I'm conveniently located next door. I'm here because I genuinely enjoy your company, both of you, and because friendship isn't a burden. It's a choice I'm making actively and happily. But what Noah's looking for, what he needs, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. And honestly, what Noah needs most is what he already has. A father who loves him unconditionally and shows up every single day. What he wants, which is different from needs, is connection with people who care about him. I can be that person without replacing anyone or taking on responsibilities that aren't mine. She moved closer, her expression serious but kind. You're catastrophizing, imagining all the ways this could go wrong instead of accepting that maybe it's going right. I don't know how to do that. I've noticed. You're very committed to expecting disaster. It's kept me safe. Has it? Or has it just kept you lonely? The question landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading outward. Lucas thought about the last 3 years, about the careful distance he'd maintained from everyone, about the nights sitting alone in the dark, convincing himself that isolation was a form of strength. Maybe Maya was right. Maybe safety and loneliness had become so intertwined he couldn't tell them apart anymore. I don't want to hurt you, he said finally, or Noah. I don't want either of you to invest in something I'm not capable of sustaining. What makes you think you're not capable? Because I barely held it together when Sarah died. Because some days, even now, I feel like I'm one wrong move away from falling apart. Because I don't know if I have the emotional bandwidth for anything beyond survival mode. Maya stepped close enough that Lucas could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from her presence. Lucas, you've been operating at survival capacity while also being an excellent father, maintaining a career, keeping a household running, and showing up for your son in every way that matters. That's not barely holding it together. That's extraordinary resilience. And if you can do all that alone, imagine what you could do with support. I'm scared, Lucas admitted, the words barely above a whisper. I know. That's okay. Being scared doesn't mean you can't move forward. It just means you're brave enough to acknowledge what's at stake. They stood there in the kitchen with the morning light streaming through the windows, the turkey waiting to be roasted, the distance between them feeling both vast and infinitesimal. Lucas wanted to close that distance, wanted to believe Maya's words, wanted to trust that his heart could expand enough to hold everything. Sarah's memory, Noah's needs, and this new feeling growing inside him that he was terrified to name. Instead, he stepped back and picked up the vegetable peeler. Show me how to do the potatoes. If Maya was disappointed by his retreat, she didn't show it. She simply moved back to her cutting board and started explaining the proper way to peel and dice, letting the moment pass without forcing anything. Lucas was grateful for that, for her ability to read what he needed and provide it without judgment. They spent the next 2 hours cooking together, the kitchen filling with smells that made the house feel alive in a way it hadn't since Sarah died. Maya told stories about disastrous holiday meals from her teaching years, about the time a student tried to deep fry a turkey in the school parking lot, about her brother's competitive approach to everything, including who could make the best pie. Lucas found himself laughing, actually laughing, and when Noah stumbled downstairs at 8:30, still in his pajamas, he stopped in the doorway with wide eyes. "Ms. Maya, you're here. Are you making breakfast?" "We're making Christmas dinner, actually. Want to help?" Noah scrambled into the kitchen, and Lucas watched his son bloom under Maya's attention as she showed him how to mash potatoes, how to taste and adjust seasoning, how to crack eggs without getting shells everywhere. She treated him like a capable assistant rather than a child who might make mistakes, and Noah rose to the occasion with a seriousness that made Lucas's heart hurt in the best way. "Dad, I'm cooking!" Noah announced proudly, covered in flour and looking thrilled about it. "I can see that, buddy. You're doing great." Miss Maya says cooking is art you can eat. Miss Maya is very wise. Maya caught his eye over Noah's head and smiled, and Lucas felt something shift inside him, some internal resistance giving way. This was what he'd been afraid of, this feeling of rightness, of his small family expanding to include someone new, of life moving forward whether he was ready or not. But maybe being ready was overrated. Maybe sometimes you just had to trust the moment and see where it led. By noon, the house smelled like a proper holiday. The turkey was in the oven, sides were prepped, and Noah had been conscripted into setting the table with instructions to make it fancy. Lucas stood at the sink washing dishes while Maya dried, and the domesticity of it felt both foreign and familiar, like muscle memory from a life he'd almost forgotten. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for all of this. I would have served Noah cereal and called it Christmas if you hadn't shown up." "That's not true. You would have figured it out. Maybe. But it wouldn't have been this." He gestured around the kitchen at the food and the warmth and the evidence of collaboration. "I forgot what it feels like to not do everything alone." "You don't have to do everything alone, Lucas. That's what I keep trying to tell you." "I'm starting to believe it." Maya's hand found his on the counter, just for a moment, a brief touch that carried weight beyond its duration. "Good. That's progress." The afternoon passed in a pleasant blur. Noah played with his art supplies in the living room while Lucas and Maya finished preparations, their conversation flowing easily between comfortable silence and genuine engagement. Lucas found himself telling her about his work, about the bridge project he was designing that would span a river valley in Montana, about the satisfaction of solving problems that had physical manifestation in the world. "Show me," Maya said, and Lucas pulled up his computer, showing her the CAD drawings and structural calculations. He expected her eyes to glaze over the way most people's did when he talked about load distribution and tensile strength. but Maya studied the designs with genuine interest. "It's beautiful," she said finally. "The way you've integrated the supports into the landscape, making them look natural instead of imposed. That's art, Lucas. Just like you said, art you can drive across." "I never thought of it that way." "That's because you separate creativity from functionality in your head. But they're not separate. The best engineering is creative, and the best art is functional in some way, even if the function is emotional rather than physical." Lucas looked at her, at this woman who saw connections he'd never considered, who made him think about his work differently, who seemed to understand both the technical and emotional aspects of building things that lasted. "How did you get so wise?" "Therapy mostly, and making a lot of mistakes, and having brothers who forced me to defend every opinion I ever had." She closed his laptop gently. "Speaking of which, I should probably check on the turkey." They moved around each other in the kitchen with increasing ease, and Lucas noticed how natural it felt to have her in his space, how she didn't need direction to find things, how she'd somehow learned the geography of his life without him consciously teaching it. When she reached past him for the oven mitts, her shoulder brushed his arm, and Lucas felt the contact like electricity. "Sorry," she murmured. "Don't be." Their eyes met and held, and Lucas saw in hers the same awareness he felt, the same recognition that whatever was happening between them had moved beyond simple friendship into something neither of them had explicitly named. The moment stretched, fragile and full of possibility, until Noah's voice from the living room broke it. "Dad, can we put on Christmas music?" "Sure, buddy," Lucas called back, stepping away from Maya and the moment and the feelings that were getting harder to deny. Dinner was set for 4 o'clock, which meant Lucas spent the intervening hours trying to stay busy while fighting the nervous energy that came from knowing this was the first real holiday meal he'd hosted since Sarah died. Maya seemed to sense his anxiety and kept things light, enlisting Noah to help make a centerpiece from pine branches and candles, telling stories that kept them all laughing. At 3:30, Lucas stood in his bedroom trying to decide if he should change clothes. He'd been in jeans and a sweater all day, covered in flour and turkey juice and evidence of actual cooking. Part of him wanted to stay casual, to signal that this was no big deal, just neighbors sharing a meal. But another part, the part that was growing louder despite his best efforts to suppress it, wanted to acknowledge that this felt significant, that having Maya at his table on Christmas meant something he was afraid to examine too closely. He changed into dark slacks and a button-down, telling himself it was about respect for the holiday and not about impressing anyone. His reflection in the mirror showed a man who looked younger than he had in months, less burdened somehow. The painting Maya had made was propped on his dresser, and Lucas studied it again, seeing new details each time he looked. The way Sarah's translucent hand seemed to be blessing rather than haunting. The way Noah leaned into Lucas with complete trust. The way the whole composition suggested that loss and love could coexist. When he came downstairs, Maya was standing in the dining room adjusting candles, and she'd changed too, into a deep red dress that made her look elegant and festive and beautiful in a way that made Lucas's mouth go dry. She looked up when she heard him, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement of effort, of trying, of this mattering to both of them. "You clean up nice," she said with a slight smile. "So do you." Noah came running in wearing his best shirt, the one Sarah had bought him for his kindergarten graduation that was already getting too small. "Are we fancy now?" "We're fancy now," Maya confirmed. "Which means we have to use good manners and napkins and everything. Can I still use my fingers for the rolls?" "Absolutely. Some rules are meant to be broken." They sat down at the table Lucas had used only for homework and mail sorting for the past 3 years, and the formality of it felt strange and right simultaneously. Maya had somehow made everything look beautiful without trying too hard. Simple white plates, the pine centerpiece, candles that cast warm light across the food they'd prepared together. Lucas said a brief, secular grace that thanked the universe for bringing them together and for the food and for whatever force had led Maya to move in next door. Noah added his own thanks for Miss Maya being his friend and for his dad learning to cook and for the stuffed penguin that was watching over dinner from the sideboard. The meal itself was better than Lucas had any right to expect given his limited skills. The turkey was moist, the sides were flavorful, and everything came together in a way that felt like accomplishment. But more than the food, it was the conversation that made the dinner feel significant. They talked about everything and nothing: Noah's school projects, Maya's upcoming art show, Lucas's bridge design, memories of past holidays that were allowed to exist without overwhelming the present. Maya told them about Christmas in California with her large, loud family, about traditions involving tamales and late-night church services, and her brothers trying to outdo each other with increasingly ridiculous gifts. Lucas talked about holidays with Sarah, and for the first time he could do it without feeling like the memories would drown him. Noah listened to both of them with the kind of attention children give when they're learning how to navigate complex emotions, and Lucas felt grateful that his son was seeing how to hold past and present together. "What about you, Noah?" Maya asked. "What's your favorite Christmas memory?" Noah thought about it seriously, his face scrunched in concentration. "Last year, when Dad and I built the Lego set that took forever, and we stayed up really late and ate all the cookies. But also when Mom used to read me the story about the mouse before Christmas and do all the voices." He looked between them. "Is it okay to like both?" "It's absolutely okay," Maya said gently. "You can have lots of favorite memories. They don't cancel each other out." "Good. Because this might be one too. This right now." Lucas's throat went tight. He reached over and squeezed Noah's shoulder, unable to speak past the emotion. Maya's eyes were bright when he looked at her, and he saw that she understood the significance of what his son had just said. After dinner, they moved to the living room with pie and coffee while Noah played with his new art supplies. The conversation shifted to quieter topics, both of them aware that the day was winding down, that whatever this was between them would soon return to normal neighbor boundaries. "I should probably head home soon," Maya said around 8, though she made no move to stand. "Let you guys do your Christmas Eve traditions." "We don't really have any," Lucas admitted. "Last year we watched a movie and fell asleep on the couch. The year before that we were at my parents' house and just followed their routine." "Well, you should make some. Traditions matter. They give you something to anchor to." "What would you suggest?" Maya thought about it. "Something simple, something Noah will remember. Maybe reading a story together, or taking a walk to look at the neighborhood lights, or making hot chocolate and talking about your favorite parts of the year." "Those all sound suspiciously wholesome." "That's because they are. I'm an art teacher. Wholesomeness is part of my contract." Noah looked up from his drawing. "Can Ms. Maya help us make traditions?" Lucas and Maya exchanged glances, and he saw the question in her eyes. Was this okay? Was he ready for her to become part of their rituals, woven into the fabric of their holidays? "If she wants to," Lucas said carefully. "I'd love to," Maya answered. "How about we start by looking at the neighborhood lights? I haven't had a chance to see them properly yet." They bundled up and walked through Maplewood Terrace as a unit, Noah between them, holding both their hands, chattering about which houses had the best displays. The cold air felt clean and sharp, and Lucas let himself enjoy the simple pleasure of walking beside Maya, of their son linking them together, of being part of something larger than his isolated grief. At the corner where the cul-de-sac ended, Noah ran ahead to look at an elaborate display involving animated reindeer and synchronized lights. Maya and Lucas stood together, their breath visible in the freezing air, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Thank you for today," Lucas said, "for making it feel like a holiday instead of just another day to survive." "You did that, Lucas. I just showed up. You're the one who invited me in, who let yourself try something different." "I'm terrified of what I'm feeling." The admission came out before he could stop it, raw and honest. Maya turned to face him, her expression soft in the glow of 1,000 Christmas lights. "What are you feeling?" Lucas looked at her, at this woman who'd somehow become essential to his life, who made him want things he'd convinced himself he didn't deserve. "Like maybe I could have something again. Like maybe there's room for more than just grief and responsibility. Like maybe—" He stopped, the words too big and too vulnerable. "Like maybe what?" Maya prompted gently. "Like maybe I could love someone again without betraying what I had before." There it was. The truth he'd been avoiding for months, spoken aloud in the cold December air, with his son playing nearby and the whole neighborhood decorated in celebration of hope and renewal. Maya's eyes shone with unshed tears. "Oh, Lucas, loving again isn't betrayal. It's proof that what you had before was real and good and worth carrying forward. Sarah made you someone capable of deep love. That's her gift to you. Using that capacity isn't dishonoring her memory. It's honoring what she taught you. I don't know if I'm ready. You don't have to be ready. You just have to be willing to consider the possibility. Noah came running back then, his cheeks red from cold and excitement, and they started walking home. At Maya's door, she hesitated before going inside. "Merry Christmas, Lucas." "Merry Christmas, Noah." "Wait," Lucas heard himself say. "There's something I want to give you." He hadn't planned this, hadn't even known he was going to do it until the words were out. But suddenly it felt urgent, necessary. He pulled out his phone and opened the photos, finding one from earlier that day. Maya and Noah in the kitchen, both of them laughing, flour on their noses, looking like a moment of pure joy captured accidentally. "I took this when you weren't looking. I thought maybe, if you wanted, you could use it. For whatever, I don't know. I just wanted you to have it." Maya looked at the photo and her face transformed into something Lucas couldn't quite read, surprised and touched, and something else that might have been hope. "Thank you. Yes, thank you." She stood on her toes and kissed his cheek, quick and light, and then she was inside her house before Lucas could process what had happened. He stood on her porch with his hand to his face where her lips had been, feeling like something fundamental had just shifted. That night, after Noah was asleep with the stuffed penguin clutched to his chest, Lucas sat in his living room and let himself imagine a future that included more than just survival. A future where Maya's presence in their lives wasn't temporary, where love could exist alongside memory, where moving forward didn't mean leaving Sarah behind, but rather carrying her with him into whatever came next. His phone buzzed, a text from Maya. "Thank you for today, for letting me in, for being brave enough to try." Lucas stared at the words for a long time before responding. "Thank you for seeing us, for being patient, for making me believe something more is possible." "It is possible, Lucas. I promise you it is." He fell asleep that night with his phone in his hand, Maya's painting on his dresser, and Sarah's memory held gently in his heart instead of clenched desperately against his chest. For the first time in 3 years, Lucas Reed went to sleep on Christmas Eve feeling something that resembled peace. Christmas morning arrived with Noah jumping on Lucas's bed at 6:15, a blur of excitement and flannel pajamas. Lucas woke to his son's face inches from his own, eyes wide with anticipation. "Dad, it's Christmas! Santa came! There's presents and everything!" Lucas pulled Noah into a hug, breathing in the little boy's smell of him, shampoo and sleep and pure joy. "Let's go see what Santa brought." They spent the next hour in the living room surrounded by wrapping paper and the modest collection of gifts Lucas had managed. A new Lego set, art supplies to supplement what Maya had given, books about bridges and engineering that Noah had been requesting since October. Each gift was met with genuine enthusiasm, and Lucas felt grateful that his son hadn't yet reached the age where material expectations outweighed simple happiness. "Can I go show Ms. Maya my presents?" Noah asked after everything was opened. "It's pretty early, buddy. She might still be sleeping. But she said she wakes up early to watch the sunrise on Christmas." Lucas had no idea when that conversation had happened, but before he could respond, his phone buzzed. Maya's name on the screen, a message that simply said, "If Noah wants to come over and show me his loot, my door's open. I made cinnamon rolls." "Miss Maya says you can come over," Lucas told Noah, who was already scrambling toward the door. "But get dressed first and brush your teeth." While Noah rushed through his morning routine with unusual efficiency, Lucas found himself tidying the living room and checking his reflection in the bathroom mirror more times than necessary. He told himself it was just about being presentable, not about the fact that he'd be seeing Maya again, that yesterday had felt like a turning point he wasn't sure how to navigate. They walked across the frost-covered lawn 15 minutes later, Noah clutching his favorite new Lego set and practically vibrating with excitement. Maya answered the door in soft clothes that suggested comfort over style. Yoga pants and an oversized cardigan, her hair loose and curling around her shoulders. She looked warm and approachable, and like everything Lucas hadn't known he was missing. "Merry Christmas," she said, stepping aside to let them in. Her house smelled like cinnamon and coffee, and something woodsy, pine maybe, from the small tree in her living room corner, decorated with what looked like handmade ornaments. Noah immediately launched into a detailed explanation of everything Santa had brought, while Maya listened with genuine interest, asking questions and admiring each item. Lucas stood in her entryway, feeling like an intruder in a moment that somehow also felt like it was exactly where he was meant to be. "Coffee?" Maya offered, looking at Lucas over Noah's head. "Please." In her kitchen, Lucas noticed details he'd missed during his previous brief visit. Paintings everywhere, some finished, some in progress, all displaying a level of skill that made him understand why galleries showed her work. A collection of mugs that looked handmade, each one slightly different. Windows that caught the morning light and transformed everything into something worth painting. "Your home is beautiful," Lucas said as Maya handed him coffee in a mug shaped like an owl. "It's slowly becoming mine. Moving is strange. You bring all your stuff to a new place and have to figure out how it fits in different spaces." She pulled a tray of cinnamon rolls from the oven. "How was your Christmas morning so far?" "Good. Really good, actually. Noah was happy, which is all that matters." "And what about you?" The question was casual but carried weight. Lucas thought about how to answer honestly without revealing too much. "I woke up feeling lighter than I have in years. Like maybe holidays don't have to be something to survive anymore." Maya's smile was soft and knowing. "That's good, Lucas. That's really good." They ate warm cinnamon rolls while Noah played with his Legos on Maya's living room floor, and Lucas found himself relaxing into the easy comfort of her presence. They talked about small things, her plans to visit her family in January, his upcoming deadline for the Montana Bridge project, whether the winter would bring more snow. Surface conversation that felt deeper because of everything unspoken beneath it. "I have something for you," Maya said suddenly, standing and disappearing into what Lucas assumed was her studio. She returned carrying a canvas about 2 feet square, wrapped in brown paper. "I wasn't sure if I should give this to you yet, but after yesterday, it feels right." Lucas unwrapped it carefully while Noah came over to watch. The painting inside made his breath catch. It was their house, his house, rendered in Maya's impressionistic style, but transformed. The windows glowed with warm light. The yard was full of color, flowers that weren't currently there, but suggested spring and growth and possibility. And on the front porch, 3 figures sat together, distinct enough to be recognizable, but soft enough to suggest memory or hope or both. Sarah sat on the porch swing. Lucas and Noah stood nearby, not separate from her, but not constrained by her presence either. The whole composition suggested that all of them could exist in the same space, past, present, future, without any of it negating the rest. "Maya," Lucas whispered, unable to find words adequate for what he was feeling. "It's called home," she said quietly. "I started it weeks ago, before I really knew you, but it kept evolving as I got to know you both better. I wanted to paint what I saw when I looked at your house, not just the building but the life inside it, the love that built it, the possibility of what it could become." Lucas couldn't speak. He was aware of Noah beside him, studying the painting with serious concentration, and of Maya watching them both with an expression that suggested she understood exactly how much this gift meant. "It's us," Noah said finally. "All of us. Even Mom." "Yes," Maya confirmed, "because she's part of your family. She always will be." Noah looked up at Lucas with eyes that were wise beyond his years. "Can we hang it in the living room, so we can always remember?" "Yeah, buddy, we can do that." After they left, carrying the painting carefully between them, Lucas felt fundamentally altered. 2 paintings now, one showing them as they were with Sarah's blessing, another showing them as they could be with Sarah's memory integrated rather than dominating. Maya was giving him permission to imagine a future, and the gift felt both terrifying and essential. The days between Christmas and New Year's passed in a strange, suspended quality, like the world was holding its breath before committing to a new year. Noah had the week off school, which meant Lucas juggled work and parenting with varying degrees of success. Maya was around, not intrusive but present, appearing at moments when Lucas needed an extra set of hands or just adult conversation. She'd stop by with coffee when she noticed his office light on early. She'd entertain Noah with art projects when Lucas had video calls that required focus. She'd appear with takeout on nights when Lucas had clearly forgotten about dinner until Noah was already hungry. Small gestures that added up to something significant. The feeling of being part of a team again, of not carrying everything alone. On the 28th, Lucas found himself at Maya's door around 9 p.m., after Noah was in bed, driven by an impulse he didn't fully understand. She answered in paint-stained clothes, music playing from her studio, clearly deep in creative work. "Hey," she said, surprised but pleased. "Everything okay? Can we talk?" "Of course, come in." Her studio was a controlled chaos of works in progress. Lucas recognized some of the subjects, landscapes from around Maplewood Terrace, abstract pieces that looked like emotion made visible, a portrait of an elderly woman who might have been Maya's grandmother. She moved aside some supplies so he could sit on the old couch against one wall. "What's on your mind?" she asked, settling beside him with the casual intimacy that had developed between them. Lucas took a breath, gathering courage. "I need to understand what this is, between us. Because Noah's getting attached, and He stopped, searching for words. "I'm feeling things I haven't felt since Sarah, and I need to know if I'm imagining this or if we're what?" Maya asked gently. "If there's something here worth exploring, or if I'm just a lonely widower projecting onto the first kind person who's paid attention to me in years." Maya was quiet for a moment, and Lucas felt panic rising. He'd miscalculated. He'd ruined the friendship by pushing for more. "Lucas, look at me." He did. Her eyes were serious but warm, holding his gaze with steady certainty. "I moved here to get away from a relationship where I made myself smaller to fit someone else's expectations," she said. "I promised myself I wouldn't do that again, that I'd only invest in connections that felt real and equal and worth the risk. So when I tell you that what I feel for you isn't pity or convenience or some rescue fantasy, I need you to believe me. What do you feel?" "I feel like I've found someone who sees the world the way I do, as something that can be both broken and beautiful simultaneously. I feel drawn to your quiet strength, your dedication to Noah, the way you're trying so hard to heal even though it scares you. I feel—" She paused, and Lucas saw vulnerability flash across her face. "I feel like I could fall in love with you if you gave me permission to." The words hung in the air between them, honest and terrifying, and exactly what Lucas needed to hear. He thought about Sarah, about what she would want for him, and knew with sudden certainty that she'd want this. She'd want him to be brave enough to love again, to give Noah a fuller life, to let himself be happy. "I'm not ready," he said, and watched Maya's face fall slightly before he continued. "I'm not ready for anything to change quickly or dramatically. I'm not ready to introduce Noah to the concept of me dating or to navigate what that would mean for our family. But I'm ready to—" He searched for the right words. "I'm ready to acknowledge that this is something, that you're someone I think about constantly, that the idea of you not being in our lives feels impossible now." "That's enough," Maya said softly. "That's more than enough for right now. I need to go slow. I can do slow. I need you to understand that Noah comes first, always, and if at any point this feels like it's not good for him, then we adjust or stop entirely. Lucas, I'm not trying to force myself into your family or replace anyone. I just want to be in your life in whatever way works for everyone." Lucas felt something release in his chest, some tension he'd been holding for months. "Okay. Okay? Okay. Let's see where this goes. Slowly, carefully, but honestly." Maya's smile was radiant. "I can work with that." They sat together on her studio couch, talking until past midnight, sharing histories and fears and hopes with the kind of honesty that felt both vulnerable and safe. Lucas told her about meeting Sarah in college, about their wedding that rained the entire day, about watching her become a mother and feeling like his life was complete. Maya told him about her ex who'd wanted her to be less vibrant, about choosing teaching because it let her make a living while staying connected to creativity, about moving to Maplewood Terrace with no plan beyond giving herself space to figure out who she was. "I wasn't looking for this," Lucas admitted at one point. "For you. I'd convinced myself I was done with all of it. The best things usually show up when we're not looking for them." Is that artist wisdom or just optimism? "Both," They're not mutually exclusive. When Lucas finally went home, he felt lighter and more uncertain simultaneously. He'd acknowledged something real, committed to exploring it, and now had to figure out how to integrate this new reality into a life he'd built entirely around protection and routine. New Year's Eve arrived with Noah announcing that they should have a party. Lucas, who'd spent the last 2 New Year's Eves asleep before 10, tried to explain that parties required planning and guests and effort. "We have a guest," Noah pointed out, "Ms. Maya, and we have food and decorations from Christmas. We just need noisemakers and sparkly stuff." "Sparkly stuff isn't really our style, buddy." "It could be. We're making new traditions, remember?" Lucas couldn't argue with his own logic being used against him. He texted Maya, feeling ridiculous. "Noah wants to throw a New Year's party, just the 3 of us. Are you free tonight?" Her response came quickly. "I'll bring the sparkly stuff." She showed up at 7 with a bag full of party supplies that suggested she'd taken Noah's request seriously. Streamers, noisemakers, a ridiculous hat shaped like a disco ball, and ingredients for something she called New Year's nachos. Noah was thrilled. Lucas was charmed despite himself. They spent the evening being deliberately silly in a way Lucas hadn't allowed himself since before Sarah died. They played board games where Noah made up rules as he went. They made elaborate nachos that were probably more toppings than chips. They created a countdown schedule that involved celebrating midnight in every time zone, which meant noisemakers at 6 p.m. for Sydney and progressively later for everywhere else. Around 9, while Noah was distracted with building a Lego spaceship in the living room, Lucas found himself alone with Maya in the kitchen. She was washing dishes and he was drying, and the domesticity of it made something in his chest feel full. "Thank you for doing this," he said. "Noah's having the time of his life." "So am I. When's the last time you wore a disco ball on your head?" "Never, actually." "Well, there's your problem. Everyone needs disco ball hat experiences." Lucas laughed and Maya turned to face him, suds still on her hands, her expression shifting from playful to serious. "Can I tell you something?" she asked. "Always?" "This, tonight, Christmas, all of it, this is what I moved here hoping to find. Not specifically you and Noah, but this feeling, connection that matters, people who make each other's lives better just by showing up. I know we're going slow and being careful, but I want you to know that I'm all in on whatever this becomes." Lucas set down the dish towel and took a step closer to her. "I'm terrified I'm going to mess this up, that I'll get scared and retreat, or that I won't be enough, or that Noah will get hurt if this doesn't work out." "All of those things are possible," Maya said honestly, "but they're also possible if we don't try. The only guarantee is that we'll regret not taking the chance." "When did you get so brave?" "I'm not brave. I'm just tired of living small." They stood there in Lucas's kitchen with the sound of Noah playing in the next room and the promise of a new year just hours away, and Lucas felt something shift. A decision being made, a line being crossed, a future being chosen, even though the outcome was uncertain. "I want to kiss you," he said, the words surprising him even as he spoke them. Maya's breath caught. "Yeah? Yeah. But I don't know if I should. If it's too soon or too fast or if—" "Lucas, stop catastrophizing and just tell me what you want." What he wanted. When was the last time anyone had asked him that? When was the last time he'd let himself want anything beyond Noah's safety and his own survival? "I want to try," he said finally. "I want to see if I can do this without feeling like I'm betraying Sarah. I want to know if this feeling between us is real or if I'm just desperate for connection." "There's only one way to find out." Maya stepped closer, giving him space to retreat if he needed it. But Lucas didn't retreat. He closed the distance between them, his heart pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it, and kissed her with 3 years of loneliness and hope and fear behind it. The kiss was gentle and tentative, both of them testing boundaries and possibilities. Lucas felt Maya's hand come up to his face, warm and steady, and something in him broke open. Not painfully, but like a door that had been locked finally finding its key. He thought of Sarah, and for the first time the thought didn't bring crushing guilt. Instead, he felt something that might have been permission, might have been release. might have been the simple truth that loving one person completely didn't prevent him from loving again. When they pulled apart, Lucas was shaking. Maya kept her hand on his face, grounding him. "You okay?" she whispered. "I don't know, maybe. I think so. That's honest. I can work with honest." "Dad, Miss Maya, it's almost time for Paris midnight." They broke apart as Noah came running in, oblivious to what had just happened. Lucas caught Maya's eye and saw his own mix of emotions reflected back, excitement and fear and hope and uncertainty all tangled together. They celebrated Paris midnight with noisemakers and sparkling cider and plastic champagne flutes. Then London. Then New York. By the time actual midnight arrived, Noah was asleep on the couch, the disco ball hat askew on his head, completely exhausted from celebrating time zones. Lucas and Maya stood together in the quiet house, the last seconds of the year ticking away on the TV. "Happy New Year," Maya said softly as the countdown reached 0. "Happy New Year." They didn't kiss again. The moment didn't need it. Instead, they stood side by side watching the fireworks on TV, and Lucas felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years, the sense that the future might hold something beyond endless grief and careful survival. After Maya went home, Lucas carried Noah upstairs and tucked him into bed, removing the disco ball hat gently. He sat in the chair beside his son's bed for a while, watching him sleep, thinking about the year ahead and all its uncertainties. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "Thank you for tonight, for the kiss, for being brave enough to try." Lucas typed back slowly, choosing his words carefully. "Thank you for being patient, for seeing us, for making me believe something more is possible. It is possible. We'll figure it out together." Together. The word felt revolutionary. Lucas went to bed that night with his phone beside him, Maya's paintings on his walls, and Sarah's memory held gently in his heart alongside this new feeling that he was finally ready to name. The first week of January brought routine back as Noah returned to school and Lucas to his regular work schedule. But the routine felt different now, lighter somehow, with the knowledge that Maya was next door, that they'd acknowledged something real between them, that his life might be expanding instead of staying frozen in grief. They were careful around Noah, not hiding anything but not forcing changes either. Maya still came over for dinner sometimes. Lucas still borrowed her ladder for household repairs. Noah still spent Sunday afternoons in her studio learning about color theory and perspective. To an outside observer, nothing had changed, but Lucas felt the difference in every interaction, the way Maya's hand would brush his when passing dishes, the way their conversations continued in text messages late into the night, the way he caught himself looking forward to moments when their lives intersected. On January 6th, Lucas had a breakthrough on his Montana bridge design. The solution to a structural problem that had been bothering him for weeks appeared fully formed while he was making Noah breakfast, and he immediately texted Maya a photo of his rough sketch on a napkin. "Genius," she texted back. "Come show me the actual plans tonight after Noah's asleep?" He did, appearing at her door at 8:30 with his laptop and a nervous energy he couldn't name. They sat together on her couch while he explained the mathematics and engineering principles, and she listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed she understood the conceptual beauty even without the technical knowledge. "It's like a painting," she said finally. "You're not just solving a problem, you're creating something that will exist in the world and affect how people move through space. That's art, Lucas." "You keep saying that." "Because you keep not believing it." She shifted to face him more fully. "You separate everything into categories, art and engineering, past and present, grief and joy. But life isn't that clean. Things overlap and intertwine and coexist. That's what makes them beautiful." Lucas closed his laptop and set it aside. "Is that what we're doing? Overlapping and intertwining?" "I think so, if you're okay with that." "I'm terrified of it. But I'm more terrified of not trying." Maya took his hand, lacing their fingers together in a gesture that felt both intimate and casual. "We don't have to define this yet. We can just let it be what it is." "What if Noah asks? What if he realizes something's changing?" "Then we'll be honest with him in age-appropriate ways. Kids are resilient, Lucas, and Noah already loves me in his own way. This doesn't have to be scary for him." Lucas thought about his son's easy affection for Maya, the way he lit up when she was around, how he'd started calling her house Ms. Maya's art place, like it was a destination of significance. When do we tell him? When it feels right. When there's actually something to tell beyond we're figuring things out. Kids don't need all the details. They just need to know the adults in their lives are happy and stable and committed to their well-being. You're really good at this, at knowing what to do. Maya laughed softly. I'm not. I'm making it up as I go, same as you. I just have the advantage of not being the parent, so the stakes feel lower for me. But Lucas, I promise you, I will never do anything that puts Noah's emotional health at risk. He matters too much to me. They sat together in the quiet of her studio, hands linked, and Lucas felt the future arranging itself into new possibilities. Not the future he'd planned with Sarah, but a different one that honored what he'd lost while making room for what might be gained. The next morning, Lucas woke to find Noah already up and sitting at the kitchen table drawing. He came over to see what his son was working on and found himself looking at a picture of three people, clearly Lucas, Noah, and Maya, standing in front of a house with a rainbow overhead. That's nice, buddy. What's it for? Ms. Maya said we should draw our families for art class. This is mine. Lucas's heart clenched. Your family? Yeah, you and me and Miss Maya. She's family now, right? She comes to our dinners and helps us cook and knows all our stuff. The casual way Noah said it, like it was the most obvious thing in the world, made Lucas realize his son had already integrated Maya into their lives more thoroughly than Lucas had acknowledged. Children saw clearly sometimes, unencumbered by adult complications about what things meant or should mean. Do you like having Ms. Maya as part of our family? Lucas asked carefully. Yeah, she makes you smile more. And she teaches me cool stuff. And she knew about Mom without us having to explain everything. Noah looked up at Lucas with serious eyes. Is that okay? That I like her? Of course it's okay, buddy. I like her too. I know, I can tell. Noah returned to his drawing, adding details with careful concentration. Mom would like her. I think they'd be friends. The observation, delivered with such simple certainty, made Lucas's throat tight. What makes you say that? Because they're both good at seeing people, really seeing them, not just looking. Noah added more color to the rainbow. And because Mom would want us to be happy, and Ms. Maya makes us happy. Lucas pulled his son into a hug, overwhelmed by the wisdom of children and the way grief and joy could exist simultaneously if you let them. You're pretty smart, you know that? Mom always said I got it from you. Your mom was pretty smart herself. That afternoon, while Noah was at school, Lucas found himself in his bedroom, looking at the box he'd avoided for 3 years. Sarah's things that he hadn't been able to donate or display, caught in limbo between keeping and releasing. He opened it slowly, pulling out the items he'd packed away because seeing them hurt too much. Her favorite sweater, the journal she'd kept sporadically, photos from their honeymoon, the silver bracelet Noah had mentioned to Maya. He sat with each item, letting himself remember without drowning in the memory. Sarah in that sweater, curled up reading. Sarah writing in her journal at the kitchen table. Sarah on the beach in Mexico, laughing at something he'd said. Sarah wearing the bracelet every single day like a talisman. For the first time, the memories didn't devastate him. They hurt, would probably always hurt, but beneath the hurt was gratitude. Gratitude that he'd had her at all, that they'd built a life together, that she'd given him Noah and taught him how to love completely. He took the bracelet downstairs and found an empty box. Inside, he placed the bracelet along with a note written in his steadiest handwriting. For Noah to give to someone important someday. Mom would want it to keep traveling, to keep meaning something. Love, Dad. The gesture felt significant, like permission given and received simultaneously. Sarah's memory could live on through gifts passed forward rather than relics locked away. Lucas could hold her in his heart while making room for new love, new memories, new possibilities. His phone rang. Maya's name on the screen, her timing impeccable as always. Hey, he answered. Hey yourself. Random question. Are you free Saturday afternoon? My art show opening is that evening, and I'm nervous, and I thought maybe you and Noah might want to come. No pressure, but we'll be there, Lucas said without hesitation. What time? The surprise in her voice was evident. Really? It's at a gallery in the city. Might be boring for a 6-year-old. Noah will love it. He gets to see your work on real walls and tell everyone his neighbor is famous. I'm not famous. You're incredibly talented, Maya, and we want to be there. There was a pause, and Lucas heard the emotion in her voice when she spoke. Thank you. That means more than you know. Saturday arrived with Lucas more nervous than he'd been about any social event since Sarah's funeral. He dressed carefully, nice slacks, a sweater Sarah had bought him that he'd avoided wearing because it reminded him of her, leather shoes he'd only worn to weddings. Noah wore his best outfit again, increasingly tight across the shoulders, and declared himself fancy enough for a gallery. The drive into the city felt significant. Lucas couldn't remember the last time he'd gone anywhere that wasn't strictly necessary. Grocery stores, Noah's school, doctor appointments. Choosing to attend a social event, to support someone. To be present in a life beyond his own small circle felt both terrifying and exhilarating. The gallery was in a converted warehouse with high ceilings and exposed brick. Maya's work covered one entire wall, a series of pieces that ranged from realistic portraits to abstract compositions, all of them carrying her distinctive style of finding beauty in the space between precision and emotion. Lucas stood in front of them, feeling overwhelmed by the talent on display, by the realization that this woman who'd entered his life so quietly was someone with depth and skill he was only beginning to understand. Maya found them standing before a large canvas depicting what looked like a family dinner, multiple generations around a table, faces rendered in loving detail, the whole scene infused with warmth and connection. "You came," she said, and Lucas heard relief in her voice. "We wouldn't have missed it. Maya, your work is extraordinary. You're biased. I'm honest. These are incredible." Noah was tugging on Maya's hand, pulling her toward a painting of a child flying a kite. "Is that me?" Maya knelt to his level. "You were my inspiration for that one. Remember when we talked about what freedom feels like? And I said it feels like flying, but with strings so you don't get lost." "Exactly. That's what I tried to paint." Lucas watched them together and felt his heart expand in a way that should have scared him, but instead felt like finally breathing deeply after years of shallow breaths. This was what moving forward looked like. Not forgetting Sarah or replacing what they'd had, but adding new layers, new love, new possibilities to a foundation she'd helped him build. The evening passed in a blur of gallery visitors, wine in plastic cups, and strangers complimenting Maya's work. Lucas stayed close but not hovering, letting her shine while being present as support. Noah charmed every person who spoke to him, explaining with serious authority which paintings were his favorites and why. As the crowd thinned around 8, Maya found Lucas standing in front of the painting she'd given him for Christmas, the one of their house with all 3 figures on the porch. She'd included it in the show, and seeing it on the gallery wall made Lucas's throat tight. "Home," he read the placard. "Not for sale." "Some things aren't meant to be sold," Maya said softly, standing beside him. "Some things are just meant to exist." "Thank you for this. For all of it. For seeing us so clearly." Maya slipped her hand into his, and Lucas didn't pull away even though they were in public, even though people might see and make assumptions. He held on, anchoring himself to this moment and this feeling and this woman who'd somehow made the impossible seem possible. On the drive home, Noah fell asleep in the back seat. Lucas glanced at Maya in the passenger seat, her eyes closed, a small smile on her face. "Tired?" "Good tired. Today was perfect. Your work is going to sell out. You know that, right?" "Maybe. But that's not why I do it. I do it because I have to, because not creating feels like not breathing." She opened her eyes and looked at him. "You understand that. You feel that way about your bridges." "I never thought about it like that, but yes, building things that last, that serve a purpose, that exist in the world, it matters to me in a way I can't fully explain. That's what artists and engineers have in common. We both want to make things that outlive us." They drove in comfortable silence until pulling into Maplewood Terrace. Lucas parked in his driveway but didn't immediately get out. "Maya, I need to tell you something." "Okay." "I'm falling in love with you. I don't know when it started or how to stop it. And I'm still scared of what it means, but I need you to know that this is real for me. You're not a rebound or a convenience. He struggled for words. You're someone I want in my life permanently. Maya's eyes shone in the dim light of the car. Lucas, you don't have to say anything back. I just needed you to know. I'm falling in love with you too, she said quietly. I have been for a while. I was just waiting for you to be ready to hear it. Lucas reached across the console and took her hand. I'm ready, terrified, but ready. They sat together in the quiet car with Noah asleep in the back and the future spreading out before them full of uncertainty and possibility. And for the first time in 3 years, Lucas Reed felt truly, completely alive. Lucas carried Noah inside while Maya waited on the porch, both of them moving carefully through this new reality they'd just spoken into existence. After tucking his son into bed, Lucas returned to find her standing by the door, uncertainty flickering across her face for the first time since he'd known her. Should I go? She asked. Or do you want to talk more about what we just said? Lucas pulled her gently inside and closed the door against the January cold. Stay, please. I don't want this conversation to end in a car. They settled on the couch in his living room, the space where they'd shared so many careful conversations, and Lucas felt the weight of what they'd acknowledged pressing down on him. Not painfully, but with the kind of gravity that came from something real and consequential. I meant what I said, Lucas started, but I need you to understand what loving me means. It means loving someone who's still grieving, who probably always will be in some form. It means being patient when I have bad days where Sarah's absence feels fresh. It means sharing space with a memory that doesn't go away just because I'm ready to move forward. Maya shifted to face him more fully. Lucas, I'm not asking you to stop grieving Sarah or to pretend she didn't exist. I would never want that. She was your wife, Noah's mother, the person who shaped you into the man sitting in front of me. I'm not trying to erase her or compete with her memory. I'm just asking to be part of your present while honoring your past. I know. Intellectually, I know that. But there's this voice in my head that keeps saying I don't deserve this, that moving forward is selfish, that Sarah should be here instead of... His voice cracked, and Maya reached for his hand. Sarah should be here, she said firmly. You're absolutely right. She should be here watching Noah grow up and growing old with you and living the life you planned together. The fact that she's not is a tragedy, and no amount of moving forward changes that. She squeezed his hand. But Lucas, she's not here. And you are. And Noah is. And you both deserve to have full lives, not half-lives lived in service to what was lost. How do I know I'm ready? How do I know this isn't just what? Just loneliness? Just convenience? Lucas, we've been dancing around this for months. You've had plenty of time to decide if this is real or not. What are you really afraid of? The question cut through his deflections and forced him to examine the truth underneath. I'm afraid that if I'm happy again, it means I didn't love Sarah enough. That 3 years isn't a long enough mourning period, that people will judge me, that... He stopped, the real fear finally surfacing. I'm afraid that loving you means betraying her, even though rationally I know that's not true. Maya was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was gentle but unflinching. Do you think Sarah would want you to be alone forever? Do you think she'd want Noah to grow up without seeing his father experience joy and connection and love? Because from everything you've told me about her, she sounds like someone who loved fiercely and wanted the people she loved to be happy. Lucas thought about Sarah, really thought about her, not the idealized memory he'd been protecting, but the actual woman she'd been. Practical and kind and occasionally stubborn. Someone who'd made him promise after her mother's death that he wouldn't waste time on regret, that he'd live fully because life was too short and too precious to spend in fear. She'd made him promise, and then she'd died, and he'd broken that promise every day for 3 years. She'd hate what I've become, he said quietly. She'd hate that I've been so scared of living that I've barely been existing. She'd tell me to stop being an idiot and take the chance. Then maybe you should listen to her. Lucas looked at Maya, this woman who'd seen him at his most offended and chosen to stay anyway, who'd been patient while he figured out how to want something again, who loved his son with genuine affection that had nothing to do with obligation. He thought about the paintings she'd made, about how she'd seen what he needed before he knew himself, about how her presence in their lives had transformed everything without demanding anything. I'm going to mess this up sometimes, he said. I'm going to have moments where I retreat or panic or need space to process. I'm going to struggle with integrating you into our lives in ways that feel right for Noah. I'm going to be imperfect at this. I know. I'm going to mess up too. I'm going to overstep sometimes because I care about Noah and forget that I'm not his parent. I'm going to have my own fears and insecurities about whether I'm enough, whether this is sustainable, whether I can handle the complexity of loving someone who's still healing from profound loss. She moved closer. We're both going to be imperfect. That's what makes it real. Lucas leaned forward and kissed her, and this time it felt different from the tentative kiss on New Year's Eve. This felt like commitment, like choosing forward motion over paralysis, like believing that love could exist in multiple forms without diminishing any of them. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I don't know how to do this, he whispered. How to integrate you into our lives without confusing Noah or moving too fast, or we take it slow. We're honest with him in age-appropriate ways. We let him set some of the pace. Maya pulled back to look at him. Lucas, Noah already loves me. He's already integrated me into your family in his mind. The drawing he made for school, the way he talks about our house like it's one unit, he's ahead of you on this. We're not creating something new for him. We're just acknowledging what already exists. When do we tell him that what are we exactly? Maya smiled. We're two people who love each other and are figuring out what that means. We don't need a label yet. We just need honesty and intention and commitment to doing this right. They stayed up talking until nearly 2 a.m, mapping out what moving forward might look like. Slow integration, continued separate households for now. Honest conversations with Noah about how relationships evolve. No rushing toward milestones or trying to replace what was lost. Just steady, intentional forward motion built on genuine connection. When Maya finally went home, Lucas stood at his living room window and watched her porch light come on. This woman who'd somehow become essential to his existence without him fully realizing it was happening. He thought about Sarah, about the life they'd built and the love they'd shared, and instead of guilt, he felt something that might have been gratitude. Gratitude that he'd loved deeply enough to know what real connection felt like. Gratitude that Sarah had taught him how to be vulnerable and present and committed. Gratitude that those lessons hadn't died with her but were still alive in him, ready to be applied to something new. The next morning, Noah found Lucas making pancakes and climbed onto a kitchen stool to watch. You look happy, Dad. I am happy, buddy. How can you tell? You're humming. You never hum. Lucas hadn't even realized he was doing it. I guess I'm in a good mood. Is it because of Ms. Maya? The question was casual but loaded. Lucas turned off the stove and came to sit beside his son. Yeah, it is. Can we talk about that? Noah's eyes went wide with the kind of seriousness children get when they know an important conversation is happening. Okay. You know how much I loved your mom, right? How much we both loved her? Yeah. And you know that even though she's not here anymore, she's still part of our family. She always will be. I know, like in Ms. Maya's painting. Exactly like that. Lucas took a breath, choosing his words carefully. Sometimes when people lose someone they love, they think they can never love anyone else. That loving someone new would mean they didn't love the first person enough. But that's not true. Our hearts can grow to make room for more people. Noah absorbed this, his face thoughtful. Like how I loved Mom, and I love you, and I also love Ms. Maya? Yes, exactly like that. So you love Ms. Maya too? The same way you loved Mom? Lucas felt the complexity of the question, the same way but different, equal but distinct, honoring the past while embracing the present. I love Miss Maya in a different way than I loved your mom, but it's still real and important. Does that make sense? I think so. Like how I love ice cream and pizza, but they're different things? Despite the seriousness of the moment, Lucas had to smile at his son's analogy. Something like that, yeah. Is Miss Maya going to be your girlfriend? The word sounded both juvenile and accurate. Maybe. We're still figuring out what we are to each other, but I wanted you to know that she's important to me, to both of us, and that's okay. You're allowed to love her too. I already do, Noah said simply. She's nice and she sees me and she makes good cookies, and she makes you smile again. I like it when you smile." Lucas pulled his son into a hug, overwhelmed by the straightforward wisdom of children. "I like it when I smile, too. I'd forgotten how." "Mom would like that you're smiling again. She always said smiling was important." "She did say that. Your mom was a very smart woman." They finished making pancakes together, and Lucas marveled at how a conversation he'd been dreading had turned into something simple and honest. Noah wasn't confused or upset. He was just acknowledging a reality he'd already accepted, waiting for the adults to catch up to what he'd understood instinctively. Later that week, Maya came over for dinner, and there was a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Noah seemed to sense that something had changed. Some acknowledgement had been made that allowed everyone to relax slightly. They cooked together as they had before, but with an ease that came from not having to pretend or hide or be careful about every gesture. After Noah went to bed, Lucas and Maya sat together on the couch, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, and the rightness of it made Lucas's chest feel full. "I talked to Noah," he said quietly. "About us. About how I feel about you." Maya shifted to look at him. How did he take it? He compared it to loving both ice cream and pizza. Different, but equally valid. That's actually pretty profound for a 6-year-old. He gets that from Sarah. She was good at cutting through complexity to find the simple truth. Lucas paused. He said she'd want me to be smiling again. That she always said smiling was important. He's right. And Lucas, I think she'd be proud of you. For doing the hard work of healing, for being an amazing father, for being brave enough to try again. I wish you could have known her. I think you two would have been friends. I think so too. And I carry her with me in a way because she's so present in you and Noah. I see her influence every day, in the way you love, in the values you've instilled in him, in the kind of person you are. She's not gone, Lucas. She's just transformed into the foundation of who you both are. The observation made Lucas's throat tight. Thank you for understanding that, for not seeing her as competition or a burden. She's not competition, she's context. She's the reason you know how to love deeply. That's a gift she gave you, and it doesn't stop being valuable just because she's not here to see you use it. They sat together in the quiet house, and Lucas felt layers of grief and fear and resistance finally releasing their hold on him. He would always miss Sarah. Would always wish she could be there to see Noah grow up, to grow old with him, to live the life they'd planned. But missing her didn't mean he couldn't also embrace what was in front of him. The two truths could coexist, painful and beautiful simultaneously. January turned into February, and Lucas and Maya continued their careful forward motion. They had date nights when Noah was at sleepovers with school friends. They had family dinners that felt increasingly natural. They navigated the small challenges of integrating their lives. Whose house they'd spend time at, how to balance couple time with family time, how to maintain some independence while building connection. Lucas found himself laughing more, worrying less, sleeping better. The bridge project in Montana was progressing well, and he'd started taking on additional work, feeling capable of more than just survival for the first time in years. Noah thrived under the expanded attention, his artwork becoming more confident, his social skills improving, his general happiness evident to anyone who spent time with him. On Valentine's Day, Lucas made dinner for Maya, while Noah spent the evening at Lucas's parents' house. They'd flown in for a long weekend and were thrilled to have grandson time. Lucas cooked pasta with Maya's guidance via video call, set the table with actual candles and flowers, and waited nervously for her to arrive. She showed up in a blue dress that made her eyes luminous, carrying a small wrapped package. You didn't have to do all this. I wanted to. You're always the one making gestures. It's my turn. Over dinner, they talked about everything and nothing. Her upcoming summer art residency application, his bridge project timeline, whether they should take Noah to the science museum he'd been requesting. Easy conversation that was also profound because of how much it represented. Two lives intertwining, two futures becoming one shared vision. I have something for you, Maya said after they'd cleared the dishes. She handed him the package, watching nervously as he unwrapped it. Inside was a small leather journal, clearly handmade, with his initials embossed on the cover. When Lucas opened it, he found the first page had an inscription in Maya's flowing handwriting, for recording the moments worth remembering, the past, the present, and the future all deserve to be honored. Maya, I know you're not much of a writer, but I thought maybe you'd want a place to process things. Grief and joy and everything in between. Sarah kept a journal. Noah mentioned it once. I thought maybe carrying on that tradition in your own way might be meaningful. Lucas ran his hand over the leather cover, feeling the care that had gone into the gift. This is perfect. Thank you. There's something else. Maya pulled out her phone and showed him a photograph. It was the painting of their house, that's the one she'd titled Home, but displayed now in a different context. The gallery wants to feature it in a show about family and belonging, but I told them it's not for sale, that it belongs with the family it depicts. They asked if they could at least display it with a story, where the inspiration came from, what it means. I said I'd ask you first. Lucas studied the image, thinking about what it would mean to have their story out in the world, attached to his and Sarah's and Noah's names. The privacy he'd guarded so carefully for 3 years felt less essential now, less like protection and more like isolation. Tell them yes, he said. Tell them it's about a family learning to expand without erasing who they've lost, about making room for new love while honoring old, about the fact that home isn't a fixed point, but something that evolves. Maya's eyes shone with tears. Are you sure? I'm sure. Our story isn't something to hide. It's something that might help other people see that moving forward doesn't mean betraying the past. They moved to the couch, and Lucas pulled out the gift he'd gotten for her, a set of professional-grade paintbrushes he'd researched extensively, the kind she'd mentioned wanting but never buying for herself. She unwrapped them with genuine delight, testing the bristles against her palm. These are expensive, she said. You didn't have to. You create beauty for a living. You deserve the best tools. Consider it an investment in future artwork. Future artwork featuring you and Noah? If you want. We're pretty good models, very patient, excellent at staying still. Maya laughed and kissed him, and Lucas felt the last pieces of his resistance crumble. This was real. This was happening. He was building a new life without destroying the old one, and somehow both truths felt manageable, even beautiful. Later that night, with Maya gone home and the house quiet around him, Lucas opened the journal she'd given him. He stared at the blank first page for a long time before finally beginning to write. Sarah, I don't know if you can read this wherever you are, but I need to write it anyway. I'm falling in love with someone. Her name is Maya, and she's nothing like you and also somehow perfect because of it. She sees me, really sees me, in ways I'd forgotten were possible. She loves Noah genuinely, not because she's trying to replace you, but because he's genuinely lovable. And I think you'd like her. I think you'd be friends. I think you'd tell me to stop being an idiot and just let myself be happy. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be happy again while keeping you alive in our hearts. I'm trying to give Noah a full life, not a half-life lived in service to loss. I'm trying to honor what we had by being brave enough to build something new. I hope that's okay. I hope wherever you are, you understand. I love you. I always will. But I'm also learning to love again, and I think that's what you'd want for me. Thank you for teaching me how. He closed the journal feeling lighter, like something had been released. The next morning he woke to sunlight streaming through his bedroom window and the sound of his phone buzzing. A text from Maya sent at 6:47 a.m. Good morning. Thank you for last night. I love you. Lucas typed back without hesitation. I love you too. 3 simple words that felt revolutionary. 3 words that didn't erase Sarah or betray their history, but instead added a new chapter to a story that was still being written. March brought warmer weather and the first hints of spring. Lucas's parents visited again, and Lucas finally introduced them properly to Maya, not just as the neighbor, but as someone significant in his and Noah's lives. His mother cried and hugged Maya tight, thanking her for making her son smile again. His father pulled Lucas aside and said simply, Sarah would approve. She'd want this for you. The validation mattered more than Lucas had expected. He'd been bracing for judgment, for suggestions that he was moving on too quickly, for the subtle implication that loving again somehow diminished what he'd had before. Instead, his parents embraced Maya warmly and made plans to visit more often, to be more present in Noah's life, to support this new configuration of family. By April, Maya and Lucas had fallen into a rhythm that felt sustainable. They alternated whose house they spent time at, with Maya often staying over on weekends when Noah was having sleepovers at friends' houses. They'd started talking about future plans, whether Maya should apply for the summer residency or wait until Noah was older, whether they should eventually combine households or maintain separate spaces, what their life might look like a year from now, 5 years from now. Noah's 7th birthday came with the request for a joint party. His school friends and his family, which he defined as Lucas, Maya, and his grandparents. They celebrated in Maya's backyard because it had more space, and Lucas watched his son run around with other children, happy and adjusted and thriving, and felt profound gratitude. "You did good," Maya said, appearing beside him with 2 glasses of lemonade. "Look at him. He's so happy." "We did good," Lucas corrected. "You're part of this now, part of why he's thriving." "I love him like he's mine. I hope you know that." "I do. And I'm grateful for it every single day." They stood together watching the party, and Lucas felt something he hadn't felt since before Sarah died: complete contentment. Not the absence of pain or grief, but the presence of something strong enough to coexist with it. Joy and sorrow held in the same space, neither canceling the other out. That evening, after the party was cleaned up and Noah was asleep, exhausted from celebration, Lucas and Maya sat on his back porch steps, the same spot depicted in her original painting. The night was warm, full of spring sounds, and Lucas pulled out his phone. "I want to show you something," he said, opening his photos and navigating to a folder he'd been building for months. Inside were pictures documenting their journey, the first snow fort they'd built together, Noah laughing in Maya's studio, the 3 of them at the art gallery, candid moments of ordinary life that had become extraordinary because they were shared. "You've been documenting us," Maya said softly, scrolling through the images. "I wanted to remember. All of it. How we got here, what it looked like, the moments that mattered." He took a breath. "I'm ready to talk about the future. Really talk about it. Not just vague possibilities." Maya set down the phone and turned to face him. "What does the future look like to you?" "It looks like you here permanently, not just visiting. It looks like Noah having a stable household with 2 adults who love him. It looks like building something lasting together while keeping Sarah's memory alive as part of our foundation rather than a barrier to moving forward." Lucas took her hand. "I'm not asking you to marry me yet. That feels too fast, and I want to do everything right for Noah's sake, but I am asking if you'd consider moving in with us, combining our lives officially, being a family in the fullest sense." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "Lucas, are you sure? This is a big step." "I've never been more sure of anything. You've been patient while I figured out how to want this. Now I'm ready to commit to it fully. I love you, Maya. I want you in my life and Noah's life permanently. I want to wake up next to you and fall asleep next to you and build a future that honors my past while embracing what we're creating." "Yes," Maya whispered. "Yes, I want that too. I want all of it." They kissed on the porch steps while the spring night unfolded around them, and Lucas felt something fundamental click into place. This was right. This was what moving forward looked like, not forgetting or replacing, but expanding, growing, making room for new love while keeping old love sacred. The next morning, they told Noah together. He was eating cereal at the kitchen table when they sat down on either side of him. "Buddy, we want to talk to you about something," Lucas started. Noah looked between them with milk on his upper lip. "Are you getting married?" "Not yet," Maya said with a slight laugh. "But we are going to start living together. I'm going to move into this house with you and your dad. How do you feel about that?" Noah's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? You're going to live here?" "If that's okay with you." "That's the best thing ever." Noah launched himself at Maya, hugging her tight. "Can we paint my room? And can you bring your art stuff? And can we have pancakes every weekend?" Lucas and Maya exchanged glances over his head, both of them trying not to cry at his enthusiastic acceptance. "We can do all of those things," Lucas said. "But this is a big change, so if you ever feel weird about it or want to talk about anything, you tell us, okay?" "Okay, but I won't feel weird. I've been hoping for this." Noah pulled back to look at them seriously. "Is Mom okay with this? I mean, wherever she is?" The question hit Lucas in the center of his chest, but he answered honestly, I think she is, buddy. I think she wants us to be happy, and this makes us happy. She's still part of our family. We're just making the family bigger. Like Ms. Maya's painting, with everyone together. Exactly like that. May arrived with Lucas and Maya combining households in a process that was chaotic and beautiful. Maya's furniture integrated with his, her artwork covering walls that had been bare for too long, her presence filling the house with color and warmth and life. They turned the spare bedroom into her studio, set up a system for sharing household responsibilities, navigated the small adjustments of living together. There were challenges, moments when Lucas needed space to process old grief, times when Maya felt like she was overstepping, adjustments Noah had to make to having another adult permanently present. But they worked through each issue with honesty and patience, building a foundation strong enough to weather the inevitable difficulties. On a Saturday in late May, Lucas was working in the garage office when he heard music from the backyard. He looked out to find Maya and Noah dancing to something upbeat, both of them laughing, moving with the kind of unselfconscious joy that came from feeling completely safe. He watched them for several minutes before grabbing his phone and taking a picture, adding it to the collection he'd been building. His journal entry that night read, Today I realized I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm living, really living, in a way I haven't since Sarah died. The grief is still there, will always be there, but it's not the whole story anymore. Maya and Noah were dancing in the backyard today, and I felt pure happiness watching them. No guilt, no fear, just happiness. I think this is what healing looks like. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of something good enough to coexist with it. Summer brought long days and new routines. They took Noah to the beach, to museums, to all the places Lucas had been avoiding because they reminded him too much of trips with Sarah. But with Maya beside him and Noah happy between them, the memories didn't devastate him. They just existed alongside the new memories being created. In July, Maya's art show opened with the painting of their house displayed prominently, accompanied by a placard that told their story, anonymously, protecting their privacy, but honestly acknowledging the journey from loss to love to integration. Lucas stood in front of it with his arm around Maya, reading the words she'd written about family and grief and the courage to move forward, and felt proud of what they'd built. That night, back at home with Noah asleep upstairs and the house quiet around them, Lucas and Maya sat together in the living room. He'd been carrying something in his pocket for weeks, waiting for the right moment. The moment felt right now. Maya, there's something I want to ask you. She looked up from the book she'd been reading, and something in his tone made her set it aside. Okay. Lucas pulled out the small velvet box he'd been hiding, and Maya's breath caught. I know we said we'd wait. I know we wanted to take things slow and make sure Noah was adjusted, but I've been carrying this around for a month, and every day I'm more certain. I don't want to wait anymore. I want to commit to this fully, officially, permanently. He opened the box to reveal a simple ring, elegant and understated, nothing like the ornate engagement ring he'd given Sarah because Maya was different and deserved something that reflected who she was. I'm not asking you to replace Sarah or to step into a role that was someone else's. I'm asking you to create something new with me, to be my partner, my love, my family, to help me raise Noah and build a life that honors the past while embracing the future. Will you marry me? Maya's face transformed through several emotions, surprise, joy, love, and something that looked like awe. Lucas, yes. Yes, absolutely yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she pulled him into a kiss that felt like a promise, like a commitment, like the future finally arriving after years of being deferred. When they pulled apart, both of them were crying. Should we tell Noah tomorrow? Maya asked. Let's tell him now. They went upstairs together and gently woke Noah, who blinked at them sleepily. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, buddy, Lucas said, sitting on the edge of his bed. We have something to tell you, something good. Ms. Maya and I are getting married. She's going to be part of our family officially. How do you feel about that? Noah was fully awake now, his eyes wide. Does that mean I can call her mom? The question made both adults freeze. They'd discussed this possibility, had agreed to let Noah decide when and how to navigate it, but hearing him ask so directly made it real. Maya knelt beside the bed, taking Noah's hand. You can call me whatever feels right to you. Mom, Maya, Ms. Maya. Any of those are okay. You had a mom who loved you so much, and she'll always be your mom. But if you want, I can be another kind of mom. A different one who loves you just as much. Can I have two moms? One who's with me in spirit, like in your painting, and one who's here in person? Yes, Lucas said, his voice rough with emotion. You can absolutely have two moms, both of them real, both of them important, both of them loving you completely. Noah thought about this seriously for a moment, then launched himself at Maya, hugging her tight. Then I want to call you Mom. Is that okay? That's more than okay, sweetheart. That's perfect. Lucas watched them hold each other, his son and his future wife, and felt the last piece of resistance inside him finally release. This wasn't betrayal. This wasn't replacement. This was growth, evolution, the natural progression of life continuing despite loss. Sarah would always be Noah's first mother, the woman who'd given him life and loved him fiercely. But Maya was choosing to love him too, to be present, to show up day after day. Both truths could coexist, both mothers could matter, both kinds of love could be real and valid. They sat together on Noah's bed talking about the wedding, about what it would mean to be an official family, about the fact that love could expand to include new people without diminishing what came before. And when Noah finally fell back asleep, sandwiched between Lucas and Maya, Lucas felt a peace so profound it bordered on transcendent. The wedding was planned for October, small and intimate in Maya's backyard, transformed with autumn colors. Just family and close friends, Noah serving as ring bearer, the ceremony focused on commitment and love and the blending of past and present into something new. The night before the wedding, Lucas sat alone in what had been his and Sarah's bedroom, looking at the journal Maya had given him. He'd filled dozens of pages over the months, thoughts and fears and gratitudes, conversations with Sarah that would never be answered but still needed to be written. He opened to a blank page and wrote what felt like a final entry in this chapter. Sarah, tomorrow I marry Maya. I need you to know that this doesn't erase what we had. It doesn't mean you mattered less or that I've forgotten you. You were my first love, the mother of our son, the person who taught me that I was capable of loving deeply and being loved in return. I carry you with me every day, in the way I parent Noah, in the values I hold, in the foundation of who I am. But I'm also moving forward. I'm choosing life and love and all the messy, beautiful complications that come with being fully alive. I think you'd approve. I think you'd like Maya and understand why I love her. I think you'd be proud that I'm brave enough to try again. Thank you for everything you gave me. Thank you for Noah. Thank you for showing me what love looks like. I'll keep you alive in our hearts while building something new, and somehow both of those things feel possible now. I love you. I always will. But I'm also ready to love again, and I don't think those two truths have to be in conflict. Thank you for that too, for loving me enough that I learned how to do this. Goodbye for now, Sarah. Thank you for everything. He closed the journal and placed it in the drawer of his nightstand, not abandoning it but acknowledging that this chapter was complete. Tomorrow would begin a new one, and he was finally ready. The wedding day arrived with perfect autumn weather, crisp air, bright sun, leaves turning gold and red. Lucas stood under the arch Maya's brothers had constructed, Noah beside him in a small suit, watching Maya walk toward him accompanied by her father. She wore a simple dress the color of champagne, her hair loose with flowers woven through it, her face radiant with joy. When she reached him, she whispered, "You look terrified." "I'm not terrified. I'm happy. I'm just not used to the feeling yet." The ceremony was brief and meaningful. They'd written their own vows, and when it was Lucas's turn, he spoke from the heart. "Maya, you appeared in my life when I'd convinced myself I didn't need anyone. You were patient when I was defensive, kind when I was scared, and persistent when I wanted to retreat. You saw my son in me clearly and didn't look away from the complicated reality of who we were. You made room for Sarah's memory while creating space for something new. You taught me that moving forward doesn't mean betraying the past, and that love can grow to include new people without erasing old. I promise to honor you as an individual, to support your dreams and creativity, to be a partner in every sense. I promise to love you completely while keeping my first love alive in our hearts. I promise to build a life with you that's worthy of all the courage it took to get here. I love you, Maya. Thank you for being patient enough to wait for me to be ready." Maya's vows were equally moving, acknowledging the unique challenges of their situation while expressing hope for the future they'd build together. When the officiant pronounced them married, they kissed while their small gathering of loved ones cheered, and Lucas felt the profound rightness of it all. At the reception, Noah gave a toast that he'd written himself with some help from Lucas's mother. He stood on a chair and spoke with the seriousness of someone much older than 7. "My first mom is in heaven, but she's also in my heart. She taught me that families are about love, not just blood. My new mom, Maya, loves me and Dad and makes us happy. I think my first mom would like that. She always said love was the most important thing, so I'm glad we have more love now. Welcome to our family, Mom Maya." There wasn't a dry eye in the gathering. Maya pulled Noah into a hug while Lucas stood beside them, his arm around both of them, feeling the family they'd built settling into its permanent configuration. That night, after Noah was asleep and the last guest had gone home, Lucas and Maya stood together on the back porch looking up at the stars. He pulled her close, and she leaned into him with the comfortable ease of someone who belonged exactly where she was. "How does it feel?" Maya asked. "Being married again?" "Different than I expected. Good different, like I'm honoring Sarah by being brave enough to love again rather than betraying her by moving on." He paused. "Thank you for being patient, for waiting while I figured out how to do this. Thank you for letting me in, for trusting me with your heart and your son and your complicated, beautiful life." They stood together in the quiet night, and Lucas thought about the journey that had brought them here, from the desperate isolation of early grief through the tentative connection of friendship to the committed love of marriage. It hadn't been linear or easy, but it had been real, and that made it worth every difficult moment. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from his mother. "Your father and I are so proud of you. Sarah would be too. Love you both." Lucas showed it to Maya, and she smiled through fresh tears. "Your mom's right, you know. Sarah would be proud. You honored her by learning to live fully again." "We honored her," Lucas corrected. "You made that possible." They went inside to their home, their combined home now, full of both their belongings and both their histories, past and present woven together into something new. Lucas checked on Noah one more time, finding him asleep with the stuffed penguin Maya had given him months ago clutched close. He adjusted the blanket and stood for a moment watching his son breathe, grateful beyond words for the life they'd built. In bed beside Maya, Lucas felt a contentment so complete it almost frightened him. He'd learned not to take happiness for granted, to hold it gently while knowing it could be temporary. But he'd also learned that the risk of loss didn't negate the value of what you had while you had it. Sarah's death had taught him that, and Maya's presence reinforced it. "I love you," he whispered into the dark. "I love you too," Maya whispered back. Lucas Reed fell asleep that night as a married man again, with his wife beside him and his son sleeping down the hall, with Sarah's memory held sacred in his heart, and the future spreading out before him full of possibility. The grief would always be there, would always be part of who he was. But it wasn't the whole story anymore. Now there was also love and hope, and the profound recognition that life continued, messy and beautiful and worth living fully. The walls he'd built around his heart had finally come down, not destroyed but transformed into a foundation strong enough to support something new. And on that foundation, with patience and honesty and courage, Lucas had built a home that honored everything he'd lost while embracing everything he'd found. The painting Maya had made all those months ago had proven prophetic. Past, present, and future could coexist in the same space, each one valid, each one real, none of them canceling out the others. As dawn broke over Maplewood Terrace on the first day of his new marriage, Lucas woke to find Maya already awake beside him, watching him with soft eyes. Beyond their window, he could see Noah's art project hanging on the fence, the family portrait he'd drawn months ago showing 3 people and a rainbow, prophecy now become reality. "Good morning, husband," Maya said with a smile. "Good morning, wife." And in that simple exchange, in the morning light filtering through their bedroom window, Lucas Reed finally understood what Sarah had tried to tell him in the days before she died. That love didn't end with death. It transformed. It lived on in the people left behind. in the lessons learned, in the capacity to love again. Sarah's love had made him who he was, had taught him how to be vulnerable and present and committed. And now he was using those lessons to build something new, carrying her forward not as a burden, but as a blessing. The future was uncertain, as all futures are. But for the first time in 3 years, Lucas welcomed that uncertainty. He had a wife who loved him, a son who was thriving, and a heart that had learned to hold joy and sorrow simultaneously. He had paintings on his walls showing him where he'd been and where he was going. He had a journal full of conversations with his past and the beginning of a new chapter yet to be written. He had, against all odds and despite profound loss, found his way back to hope. And that, Lucas realized as he pulled Maya close and heard Noah beginning to stir down the hall. That was everything. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of something beautiful enough to make the pain bearable. Not forgetting what was lost, but honoring it by living fully with what remained. Lucas Reed had learned to love again, and in doing so, had finally come home.